Chapter 4177. More and more people were rushing over from all directions. There were people from all 5 races. What? The human race, the god race, and the purple-gold divine dragon race joined forces to bully the beast race? Bastards, do you really think the beast race is easy to bully? What? The beast race actually dares to behave atrociously in the South Continent? These bastards, do they still think they're in the East Continent? Beat them up. As time passed, more and more people from the 4 races joined the fray. At first, there were only a few thousand people. In the end, it slowly became a few 100,000 people, and they were not weak. Their cultivation had basically reached the perfected sovereign realm, but there were differences in the profundities of the laws that they had mastered. The destructive power of a few 100,000 people fighting was not small. Not only was the Blackwater Lake razed to the ground, but even the surrounding mountains and rivers were all destroyed. Blood dyed the void and earth red. At this moment, tens of thousands of people from the sea race also gathered, but they were all standing by and watching the show. After all, they were the ones who had started this chaotic battle. But now they were like bystanders. Of course, there were also some more rational or more timid people from the 4 races watching the battle from afar. Among these spectators, there was a very ordinary-looking old man with a walking stick in his hand. The aura he exuded was not strong, and no one noticed him standing there. If one observed carefully, they would find that his turbid eyes were glowing. This person was actually Qin Feiyang. He also did not expect that the people from the 4 races would fight first. Logically speaking, with his relationship with the king, the divine king, and the human race's sovereign, he should come forward to help the 3 races. But now, obviously, he could not help. Otherwise, the sea race and the beast race might be suspicious. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and looked up at the sky above the battlefield. He saw the void distort, and a space-time passage quickly appeared. It should be him, Qin Feiyang muttered. As expected, a middle-aged man in a golden robe walked out from the space-time passage. He had golden wings on his back, and he was like a god descending, emitting a great pressure. Lord Neptune. When the several tens of thousands of sea folk saw Neptune, they immediately soared into the air to greet him. What are you guys doing here? If by any chance Qin Feiyang makes a move and kidnaps all of you, this sovereign will have to think of a way to rescue all of you. Wouldn't that be causing trouble for this sovereign? Neptune frowned. The members of the sea tribe in front of him were basically the most ordinary members of the sea tribe. Facing Qin Feiyang, whom even he, a magnate of the divine kingdom, was afraid of, they could only be beaten up. We're just here to take a look. The group of Oceanids lowered their heads. What's there to see? Neptune was furious. He was just causing trouble for him. He looked down at the 4 races and frowned. What is going on? The 3 major races ganged up on the beast race. The beast race deserves it. Who told the dragon god to betray you, my lord? The tens of thousands of oceanic species sneered. Neptune frowned. It seemed that his people's hatred for the beast race was not ordinary. He then shouted, "All of you stop!" Who dared to disobey Neptune's orders? Even the 3 major races who were unhappy with the oceanic species had to behave. We are all members of the divine kingdom. What are you guys doing here? If Qin Feiyang saw this, wouldn't he laugh at you? The sea god shouted angrily, "Lord Neptune, even the dragon god betrayed you. Why are you still speaking up for the beast race?" Someone from the god race asked, "Was there something wrong with this Neptune's brain? This matter is still under investigation. Moreover, even if there is such a thing, it is a personal grudge between the sovereign and the dragon god. Do you need to interfere? Get out of here right now, or bear the consequences." Neptune shouted with a sullen face. Seems like there really is something wrong with his brain. The members of the 3 major races snorted and turned to leave with their seriously injured companions. The casualties of the beasts were even greater. Those who survived were also in an extremely sorry state. They were either missing an arm, a leg, or an ear, or a nose. You guys get out too. Neptune looked at the tens of thousands of oceanic species. Yes, a group of oceanic species fled in horror. What a headache! Glancing at the devastated land, full of corpses, Neptune rubbed his forehead. How did the relationship between the major races develop to such a situation? Although the three major races were not on good terms with the oceanic species and the beast race in the past, there had never been such a large-scale battle. At the same time, Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he looked at the Sea King. Suddenly, he transmitted his voice. Mu Qing, help me take a look. Where are Inner Demon and Big Cousin now? Okay, Mu Qing responded. At this moment, he had already come out and was standing in the tea garden. When he heard Qin Feiyang's words, he immediately opened his all-seeing eye. Of course, it was Qin Feiyang who arranged for Mu Qing to come out in advance, because in the face of Neptune he had to be careful. After a while, a smile crept onto Mu Qing's face as she said, "They are inside a spatial divine object, and they are very close to you." He knew about the appearance of the inner demons and Lu Jijin, so now he was not surprised. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. In that case, they should be in Neptune's space divine object. He said again, "Help me see where Yu Lao is." A short while passed. Mu Qing said, "This old man is with the inner demons and Lu Jejin." "What's the situation?" Qin Feiyang was a little surprised and said suspiciously, "They know that we have the all-seeing eye, but they still did such a stupid thing." Obviously, Yu Lao was hiding in the dark, trying to find a chance to kill him. It's not that they are stupid, it's that they didn't expect that you had seen them with your own eyes when they descended on the Sea God Island. In other words, this Yu Lao still thinks that we don't know what he looks like and can't use the all-seeing eye to spy on them. As for the inner demons and Lu Jejin, Yu Lao would never think that they are all our people. Mu Qing laughed, his words full of ridicule. "Ha ha!" Qin Feiyang laughed secretly and said, "Then help me see where the other 8 geniuses of the Central Dynasty are now." Back then, on the Sea God Island, not only Elder Yu, but also the inner demons and Lu Jejin, Qin Feiyang also saw the other 8 heavenly tribulations with his own eyes, so he knew what they looked like. They are not with Yu Lao. Soon, Mu Qing's surprised voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. They are not with Yu Lao. Qin Feiyang was also stunned and asked suspiciously, "Then where are they now?" "The Sea God Island," Mu Qing replied. The Sea God Island. Qin Feiyang was deep in thought. Why did Yu Lao only bring the inner demons and Big Cousin here and leave these 8 people on the Sea God Island? Could it be that these 8 people are not very strong and might be a burden to them? Mu Qing guessed. Don't you think you are underestimating the geniuses of the Central Dynasty? Qin Feiyang was speechless. How could the geniuses brought by Yu Lao along with the inner demons and Big Cousin be weak? Taking a step back, even if they were not as strong as the inner demons and Big Cousin, they could not be a burden. Underestimate them? I think you are overestimating them. However, Neptune is so disobedient. Shouldn't we teach him a lesson? Mu Qing smiled slyly. That's what I was thinking. A smile appeared in Qin Feiyang's eyes as he raised his head to look at the Sea King. Then he left silently. At the same time, Neptune looked around. Why hadn't this person appeared yet? The Sea God Island. After Neptune returned, the Sea Clan on the islands had already evacuated. There were only 200,000 to 300,000 core members left on the Sea God Island. However, even if Neptune returned, even if Yu Lao, a big shot from the Central Dynasty, was there, the Sea Clan did not let down their guard. What is the meaning of this? He went to the Blackwater Lake without us. In an elegant and quiet courtyard, 8 young men and women gathered together with a trace of displeasure on their faces. These were the other 8 geniuses of the Central Dynasty. There is nothing we can do about it. It's because those 2 brothers are stronger than us. Besides, we're going to deal with Qin Feiyang this time. Only those 2 brothers can fight with Qin Feiyang. As for us, we can only kill the mad scientist, the golden-winged wolf king, Long Chen and Long Qin. A young man in a fiery red robe shook his head and sighed. These words were not just arrogant in the ordinary sense. The mad scientist, the white-eyed wolf, Long Chen and Long Qin were just small potatoes in his eyes. If the mad scientist and the others knew about this, they would be furious. No one had ever dared to look down on them in the divine kingdom. Let's not talk about this. I found a few jars of divine wine in the cellar of a restaurant in the West Continent. It tastes really good. One of the young men took out a jar of wine and said with a smile as he opened the seal, "Yes, yes, yes. Don't ruin your mood. Actually, think about it. They're going to fight with Qin Feiyang while we are leisurely drinking wine and chatting. Do you feel uncomfortable?" Another young man laughed. Hearing this, the others also laughed. Thinking of this, they felt a lot better. Boom! However, before they opened the jar of wine, a terrifying aura suddenly descended on the island. The 8 of them hurriedly looked up and saw an old man in his 70s or 80s walking out of a space-time tunnel with a walking stick. "Who is it? How dare you come to the Sea God's island so ostentatiously?" The 8 of them purposely said. "Who are you?" "I'm the Sea God's island. What do you want?" Accompanied by a shout, a middle-aged man from the sea race flew into the sky like lightning and looked at the old man walking out of the space-time tunnel with a trace of vigilance in his eyes. "Hee hee," the old man laughed hoarsely. The power of life and death rolled out like a tide. In the next moment, accompanied by a loud bang, the ultimate power of the law of life and death appeared. "This is the kingdom of life and death. You are Qin Feiyang." The middle-aged man stared at Qin Feiyang in horror, and then suddenly turned around and ran out of the island. He shouted, "Qin Feiyang is attacking. Everyone, escape from the Sea God's island immediately." "What? Qin Feiyang is attacking the Sea God's island again?" When the sea race on the island heard the middle-aged man shout, a deep fear appeared in their eyes. They didn't care about anything and desperately ran out of the island. Chapter 4178. Qin Feiyang ignored the escaping members of the Sea Clan and waved his hand. The kingdom of life and death, suspended in the air, charged toward the island below with a destructive force. "He is Qin Feiyang." "Why is it a bad old man?" The 8 supreme talents did not escape. They all looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. Kingdom of life and death. I really want to experience it. The young man in the red robe suddenly let out a wild laugh. Streaks of ultimacy appeared and a burst of will of the heavenly Tao erupted. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Someone actually dared to attack? He lowered his head and looked in the direction of the voice. It turned out to be a supreme talent from the Central Dynasty. The other acquaintances were also full of fighting spirit. Boom! 7 people, they all burst out with 6 ultimate ultimacy, and the will of the heavenly Tao surged in all directions. Will of the heavenly Tao, the supreme talents of the Central Divine Kingdom really can't be underestimated. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. One had to know. The supreme talents of the God Clan, the purple-gold divine dragons, the Sea Clan, and the Beast Clan had only mastered 2 or 3 ultimate ultimacy. Even the Dragon Son had only grasped 3 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws. But these 8 people, all of them had mastered the will of the heavenly Tao. These people were already comparable to the supremacies of the 3 major clans. Recalling Mu Qing's words, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Such supreme talents would never be a burden. Boom! The 8 supreme talents joined forces. 48 ultimate ultimacies that contain the will of the heavenly Tao charged toward the kingdom of life and death with shocking power. With a loud bang, the kingdom of life and death collapsed on the spot. Qin Feiyang's face turned slightly pale. A gush of hot blood gushed out from his throat. Although the kingdom of life and death was very powerful, the opponents were, after all, 8 supreme talents who had mastered the will of the heavenly Tao. If he did not use some other means, it was really impossible to defeat the 8 of them. The kingdom of life and death is just SOSO. The young man in the red robe raised his head and laughed. The 8 supreme talents joined forces to defeat my kingdom of life and death, and you are still proud? Qin Feiyang's lips curled with a mocking smile. The young man raised his eyebrows and said with a sinister smile, "Why are you so arrogant? Do you think we are the supreme talents of the 5 major clans? I have the right to be arrogant. Moreover, in my opinion, you are no different from those so-called useless geniuses." Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully. 3,000 incarnations. 3,000 kingdom of life and death instantly. As the void and the heavens of the heavenly Tao, of the sea island below, the mountains and the mountains and mountains were like dead mountains, 3,000 incarnations of the heavenly Tao, the 8 supreme of death's death, heaven's turn. I thought Yang Hao Qin Feng. In the end, he was no different from the others. He ran away like a dog. Qin Feiyang was disdainful. 3,000 of the world and death rumble. In an instant, the entire sea god's island disappeared from the surface of the sea, including all the resources. It was as if they had evaporated into thin air, leaving only dust in the sky. The 8 supreme talents who escaped were also affected by the shockwave. Their bodies were crushed on the spot. Their divine souls were also being crushed. However, in the end, a trace of their divine souls escaped. Their hearts were filled with fear. Was this Qin Feiyang's strength? 3,000 incarnations and the heavenly Tao's will. He was indeed extraordinarily strong. However, there were no casualties on the sea god's island. This was because they had escaped in time. Moreover, the 8 supreme talents blocked the first kingdom of life and death, which was equivalent to buying them enough time to escape. At the same time, they had already sent a message to Neptune. What? They went to the Sea Lion Island. When the Sea King received the message, he immediately opened up a space-time passage. Of course, Qin Feiyang also noticed that the Sea Tribe had sent a message to Neptune. Originally, he wanted to completely eliminate the 8 supreme talents. After all, they would become his opponents sooner or later. However, he had to give up on this idea when he saw that the Sea Tribe had already notified Neptune. This was because once the Sea King returned, the Sea King, who possessed the power of the origin, could easily kill him. Count yourselves lucky this time. It's better to keep a low profile when you're outside in the future. Also, tell Neptune that this is the price for not keeping his promise. As for the next judgment, we'll meet 3 days later at the 1,000 Phoenix Mountain. Don't play any tricks again. Qin Feiyang looked at the 8 supreme talents' divine souls and said indifferently. Then he opened a space-time tunnel and left without looking back. Right after Qin Feiyang left, the Sea King returned to the Sea God's island. When he saw the turbulent sea surface, his expression immediately became incomparably ferocious. The Sea God's island was the sacred ground of the Sea Tribe. Now, Qin Feiyang destroyed the entire Sea God's island. Wasn't that equivalent to slapping his face? Moreover, as a sacred ground, it naturally had a lot of resources. For example, soul vein, crystal vein, medicinal herbs. But now, everything had been destroyed. Shame. This is the greatest shame in the history of the Sea Tribe. Qin Feiyang, get out here. Neptune clenched his hands together and roared at the sky. Lord Neptune, you must kill him. Otherwise, our Sea Tribe will bear this shame for the rest of our lives. Hundreds of thousands of core members of the sea tribe gathered around, their faces filled with grief and indignation. I will. Don't worry. Neptune gritted his teeth. With a thought, Yu Lao and the inner demons appeared. Neptune said, Yu Lao, you saw it too, right? This is Qin Feiyang's means. Yu Lao lowered his head and scanned the sea surface. His eyes were filled with a shocking cold light. Yu Lao, the remnant souls of the 8 geniuses flew over. How did you guys become like this? Yu Lao was shocked. Do you still need to think about it? They must have overestimated themselves and ran to kill Qin Feiyang. In the end, they were seriously injured by Qin Feiyang. The inner demon sneered. His words were full of contempt for the 8 geniuses. The 8 geniuses immediately glared at the inner demons angrily. Don't gloat. Yu Lao also glared fiercely at the inner demons. Looking at the 8 of them, he said, Is he alone? Yes. Before leaving, he also asked us to pass on a message to Neptune. This is the price for not keeping your promise. And he also said that the next negotiation will be in 3 days at the 1,000 Phoenix Mountain. Don't play any tricks again. The 8 geniuses said, What does that mean? Does he know that you are hiding in my space divine item? Neptune looked at Yu Lao and the inner demons in surprise. Obviously so. The inner demons pursed his lips. But how did he know? He has never seen Yu Lao or your faces, nor does he know your real names. Mu Qin can't spy on your whereabouts at all. Neptune's face was full of surprise. What the hell is going on? The inner demons and Lu Jiajin certainly knew. When they first came to the Sea God Island, the inner demons had already noticed Qin Feiyang hiding in the dark. However, Neptune, Yu Lao, and the 8 geniuses were all puzzled. Did someone tell them? Neptune suddenly asked, Do you mean that there is really a spy in our divine kingdom? Yu Lao frowned. If there is no spy, then how did Qin Feiyang find your whereabouts? Neptune asked. It must be the dragon god. Someone from the sea clan around shouted. Yes, apart from him there is no one else. And he has also seen Yu Lao. The other members of the sea clan also roared angrily and murderously. Neptune frowned. No matter what his clansmen said, he still didn't believe that the dragon god would be a spy of the divine kingdom. But apart from the dragon god, who else knew what Yu Lao looked like? The king, the divine king, the supreme being of the human clan Boss Ji, and a group of elders. But these people were even more impossible, because if they were spies, then they wouldn't have come to protect the sea god's island and his clansmen. There is no evidence about the spy, so I can't say anything, but I can't let my guard down. Yu Lao thought for a while, looked at Neptune, and said, 3 days later you will go and meet him alone. You have the power of origin, so if there is a chance, you can still kill him. I'm afraid he won't give me this chance so easily. Neptune shook his head and sighed. Yu Lao raised his eyebrows and said angrily, Are you scared out of your wits by him? If he doesn't give you a chance, won't you create one yourself? Neptune's eyes trembled. Looking at the angry Yu Lao, he quickly nodded and said, I will try my best. What I want is not to try your best, but to do it. Yu Lao looked at him gloomily, then turned and opened a space-time tunnel. Where are you going? Neptune hurriedly asked. To stay at the Dragon God Mountain for a few days. I can also observe the Dragon God and see if he is a spy. Lu Yinfeng, you two stay here and guard the Sea Tribe. The others follow me to the Dragon God Mountain to recuperate. With that, Yu Lao stepped into the space-time tunnel without looking back. The remnant souls of the 8 prodigies hurriedly followed. Damn, old man, don't order me around all day. Who do you think you are? The inner demons shouted angrily. Yu Lao, who had entered the space-time tunnel, heard this and his face darkened. He almost couldn't help but go berserk. The Sea King's heart skipped a beat as he listened. Damned old man. He really dared to say that. He then cupped his hands and said politely, "I'll have to trouble you too from now on. Get lost. Do I have an obligation to protect the sea tribe?" The inner demons looked at him with disdain, then rose into the air and disappeared at the end of the sea. Neptune's face stiffened. "Yes, I admit that you have the right to be arrogant, but shouldn't there be a limit to your arrogance?" Beside him, Lu Jiajin's gaze suddenly sharpened as well. He looked at the Sea King and said, "I advise you not to kill him. Although you have origin energy and have the ability to kill us, it won't do you any good to do so." With that, he turned and left without looking back. Neptune was shocked. How could this person's insight be so terrifying? The inner demon's arrogance and rudeness did make him want to kill them, but it was short-lived and disappeared in the blink of an eye. But he didn't expect to be discovered by this person. What kind of monsters were these two? In his heart, his fear of the inner demons and Lu Jiajin deepened. Chapter 41-79 Mount Supreme. In a large hall, the king, the divine king, and the human race supremes gathered together. "I really admire this kid." He said that he would negotiate at the Blackwater Lake, but in the blink of an eye he ran to the Sea God's Island. This time, the Sea God's Island was destroyed. Neptune will probably die of anger. The divine king shook his head. He thought that Qin Feiyang would be more restrained when the people of the Central Dynasty arrived. But he didn't expect him to be so crazy. This time it's really Qin Feiyang's fault. If it wasn't for Neptune's evil intentions, would he have gone to destroy the Sea God's Island? The human race supremes shook their heads. He reaped what he sowed. Although the sea race didn't suffer any casualties, the resources of the Sea God's Island occupied almost half of the entire sea race. For Neptune, losing the resources of the Sea God's Island was probably more painful than losing the people on the island. But then again, we didn't seem to have told him the names and appearances of Yu Lao and the others. But how could Mu Qing use the all-seeing eye to spy on their whereabouts? The king was puzzled. Who knows? The divine king shook his head. You can't treat this group of little guys with ordinary eyes. Otherwise, you will definitely suffer a great loss. Just like this time, Yu Lao and Neptune were too arrogant, which was why they ended up in such a sorry state. However, if this group of brats' plan can really succeed, then it can directly break the current deadlock. It's more helpful for the current situation. The divine king said, "That's right. At present, the only thing that can make us afraid is the origin energy in the hands of Neptune and the dragon god. As long as Neptune loses his origin energy, then there's nothing to worry about. Moreover, when Qin Feiyang obtains Neptune's origin energy, then he can fight with the dragon god. This time, the reason why I called you all over is to discuss this matter." The human race supremes looked at the two and said, "What's there to discuss?" Both the monarch and the divine king were confused. Because this matter was handled by Qin Feiyang, it had nothing to do with them. They only needed to wait for the good news from Qin Feiyang. What I mean is, if Qin Feiyang successfully obtains the origin energy in Neptune's hands and successfully controls the dragon god will become our ally. In other words, from now on, our only enemies will be the Oceanids and the Central Dynasty. Humans, beasts, purple gold dragons, and beasts. If we work together, we should be able to fight against the Oceanic race and the Central Dynasty. The eyes of the human race's supreme martial artist shone brightly, and a murderous aura emanated from his body. The divine king asked in surprise, "Are you saying that we will officially rebel when Qin Feiyang controls the dragon god?" Cough, cough. Don't say it so bluntly. The word rebel sounds a bit, the human race supremes coughed. The divine king rolled his eyes. A rebellion is a rebellion. What's the point of looking for an excuse? The human race supreme smiled and asked, "What do you think?" This, the monarch and the divine king looked at each other and hesitated. "What are you hesitating about?" The human race supremes was suspicious. If we know the central dynasty's strength, we can declare war directly. But currently, we know nothing about the central dynasty's situation. It's a bit rash to declare war now. The divine king pondered. I think so too. As the saying goes, know thyself and know thy enemy, and victory is assured. Before declaring war, we must first figure out the central dynasty's strength. What if, I'm just saying, if the people from the central dynasty also control origin power, then we'll be in big trouble. The monarch was worried. This step had to be foolproof, because he couldn't afford to gamble. The divine king couldn't afford to gamble either. The human race supremes couldn't afford to gamble either, because once they lost, it wasn't just their personal matter. The entire god race, the human race, and the purple gold divine dragon race would face a disaster because of this. The human race supremes pondered for a while and nodded. It seems that I was too impatient. The monarch and the divine king's concerns weren't without reason, if they were all alone and could do whatever they wanted. Anyway, even if they died, it wouldn't implicate others. But there was no other way. Now, they were all rulers of a region. Any decision would affect the entire race. So, they didn't have the capital to be willful, and they didn't have the qualifications to fail. In short, they had to win this battle. Then let's continue to bide our time. The human race supremes shook his head and smiled. No, we should also do something. The monarch waved his hand. What can we do? The divine king and the human race supremes were taken aback and looked at him suspiciously. Spirit vein, crystal vein. Didn't Qin Feiyang say that the more spirit veins and crystal veins there are, the faster Qin Feiyang's growth will be? We can't give him other things, but spirit veins and crystal veins, for us, aren't they easy? The monarch smiled slightly. The two looked at each other. This wasn't a problem. The growth of the Black Tortoise realm is not only beneficial to the growth of the sovereign divine weapon, but also the origin power. There are only two ways to deal with the divine kingdom's origin power. The first is the power of faith, but the power of faith is really too difficult. And now, the people of the central dynasty have arrived. We don't dare to change the faith of our people, because if the people of the central dynasty find out, they will definitely be suspicious of us. So, we can only start with the second way, the origin power. As long as the Black Tortoise realm becomes as powerful as the divine kingdom, won't it be easy to deal with the divine kingdom's origin power? The monarch smiled slightly. Makes sense. The two nodded. Although the growth of the Black Tortoise realm was very slow, in the big picture, this was the safest way. Moreover, they had endured in the divine kingdom for so many years, and they didn't lack this little bit of time. The other thing was, when Qin Feiyang and the sovereign of the divine kingdom fought, the divine kingdom would definitely be destroyed. Rather than letting these spirit veins and crystal veins be destroyed in the battle, it was better to give them to Qin Feiyang as soon as possible. Since there are no objections, let's take action. The monarch said, Who are you talking about that I have no objections? The divine king snorted coldly. The monarch looked at the divine king in shock. Qin Feiyang is a descendant of your purple gold divine dragon clan. If you help him now, it's the same as helping yourself. Furthermore, if your purple gold divine dragon clan is in trouble in the future, he will definitely help you regardless of his own safety. But what about us? We are not related at all. What if Qin Feiyang really grows up and turns his back on us and doesn't care about our lives? The divine king pursed his lips. The monarch heard this, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He was speechless. Aren't you worried for nothing? Is Qin Feiyang such a person? Then who knows? You may know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. The divine king sneered and turned to look at the sovereign of the human race. What do you think? The sovereign of the human race smiled, but didn't say anything. The monarch looked at the divine king helplessly and said, If you say so, then there's nothing I can do. After all, you won't believe my guarantee. How about this? Find a time and let Qin Feiyang take us to the Black Tortoise Realm and have a good look. The Divine King said. What do you mean? The monarch was a little puzzled. I think the creatures of the Black Tortoise Realm must know him very well. The Divine King chuckled. All right, I won't speak for him. After all, seeing is believing. There's no need to find another time. Let's do it now. With that, the monarch took out the divine voice stone and sent a message to Qin Feiyang. The Divine King hurriedly said, Just say that you're curious about the Black Tortoise Realm and want to go in and take a look. Not to mention us. I don't want him to know. Right now, I'm doubting his character, and it's affecting harmony. All right. The monarch nodded with a bitter smile. Buzz. Not long after, Qin Feiyang's figure appeared. Seeing the three giants gathered together, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He smiled and said, Seniors, do you have any orders? We have nothing to do, so we want to go to your Black Tortoise Realm for a stroll. You won't refuse, right? The monarch chuckled. Go to the Black Tortoise Realm for a stroll? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Were they all so free and relaxed? It's just a small wish, and you're hesitating. Could it be that you're hiding some secrets in the Black Tortoise Realm? The Divine King teased. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He shook his head and smiled. What secrets could I have? I'm just surprised. All right, I'll go and pick you guys up now. All right, we're at Mount Supreme. The monarch nodded and told Qin Feiyang the location of the meeting. Then he turned off the divine voice stone. Soon, Qin Feiyang silently landed in a valley outside Mount Supreme, because right now no one knew about his alliance with the three races. Therefore, unless it was an emergency, it was better not to enter Mount Supreme. When he appeared in the valley, the monarch and the other two also arrived. Brat, you're amazing. Right now, Neptune probably wants to skin you alive. The monarch said, That can't be helped. He asked for it. Qin Feiyang shrugged. It's indeed a bit like asking for humiliation. But aren't you just wasting the resources on the Sea God's island by destroying it? You should first transfer all the resources to the Black Tortoise Realm and then destroy the Sea God's island. The monarch sighed. I wanted to, but there's not enough time. Qin Feiyang shook his head. If possible, he definitely wouldn't let go of the resources on the Sea God's island. All right, bring us to the Black Tortoise Realm. This time we must take a good look around and experience the scenery of the Black Tortoise Realm. The monarch smiled. How carefree. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. He waved his hand and brought the three of them to the Devil's Land. Since I have time now, I'll accompany you guys to take a look around. No need, we'll go by ourselves. The Divine King waved his hand. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them. What are they planning? The human race supreme scanned the Devil's Land and soon found something strange. The people and beasts here were actually fusing with the inheritance of the ultimate profound. Why are there so many inheritances here? The human race supreme asked. Can I release my divine sense? He couldn't believe it, so he wanted to confirm it with his divine sense. Of course, Qin Feiyang nodded. The human race supreme immediately released his divine sense and shrouded the Devil's Land. His face was full of shock. Seeing this, the Divine King and the monarch also released their divine sense. When they saw it, they were also shocked. Chapter 4180. Where on earth did you find so many inheritances? It's even richer than our divine kingdom. The Divine King looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. This you'll know in the future. For now, I won't reveal it. Qin Feiyang smiled mysteriously. The Divine King rolled his eyes at him. At this moment, she even had an illusion. Could Qin Feiyang create the inheritance of the ultimate mysteries? Otherwise, how could there be so many? Everyone was fusing, and they were all ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. Even if everyone had one, there would still be thousands of them. Even they had never seen the inheritance of thousands of ultimate laws and ultimate profundities. It was truly inconceivable. "You really don't need me to lead the way?" Qin Feiyang asked. "No need. You do your own thing." The divine king calmed down the shock in his heart and waved his hand at Qin Feiyang. Then he looked at the monarch and the human race's supremacy and turned to leave together. What the hell? Qin Feiyang looked at the backs of the three with a puzzled face. Then he entered the tea garden and made a pot of tea. While drinking, he released his perception to observe the three. Half a day passed. Realization finally dawned on his face. It turned out that they were here to investigate his background and character. It seemed that the divine king and the human race's supremacy still didn't trust him. But this was also good. He could use this opportunity to let the divine king and the human race's supremacy completely understand his character so that they could let go of their worries. He was still confident in this matter because he had always had a clear conscience towards the creatures of the black tortoise world. Qin Feiyang used his perception again to find Pai Lupi and Theta Wang and said, "You guys pay attention. Don't interfere with where the monarch and the other two go, but don't let them go to the Soul Sealing Valley." The monarch and the others came to the black tortoise world? Pai Lupi was surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. "Okay, we'll be careful." The two of them replied. The reason why he didn't let the three of them go to the Soul Sealing Valley was because he still wanted to keep this a secret. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed outside. In the black tortoise world, it had already been 15,000 years. Seeing that the monarch and the other two had not returned, Qin Feiyang did not rush them. He got up and walked towards Mu Qing's courtyard. Through Mu Qing's all-seeing eye, Neptune had already arrived at the 1,000 Phoenix Mountain. Furthermore, this time he was indeed alone. Hence, Qin Feiyang left the black tortoise world alone and headed to the 1,000 Phoenix Mountain range. 1,000 Phoenix Mountain. It had long since ceased to exist. At this moment, a golden figure stood in the void with a gloomy expression. It was Neptune. Whoosh! A space-time tunnel appeared. Neptune immediately turned his head, his eyes flashing coldly. This was because the aura coming from the space-time tunnel belonged to Qin Feiyang. The next moment, Qin Feiyang walked out of the passage and said with a smile, "Sorry to have kept you waiting." Cut the crap. Neptune's face was gloomy. "All right, let's get straight to the point. To tell you the truth, none of the Sea Clan members that I kidnapped died. However, if you want me to let them go, you have to agree to one condition." Qin Feiyang said. Not a single one died. This result surprised Neptune, because in his opinion, with Qin Feiyang's methods, he would definitely kill these people. "You don't have to doubt it, because I disdain lying about such things." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Neptune frowned and asked, "Then what is your condition?" "One thing. That is the origin energy in your hands." Qin Feiyang smiled. Neptune's gaze suddenly trembled. It turned out that this person was after the origin energy in his hands. Although there is only one condition, it is also the only condition. If you want to save these people, then you have to meet my condition. Qin Feiyang said. There was no room for negotiation. Neptune's face was gloomy and uncertain. Suddenly he sneered and said, "Your calculations are really good. As long as you get the origin energy in this king's hands, you can fight with the dragon god." Yes, Qin Feiyang nodded. There was no need to deny such a thing. "Why do you keep targeting the dragon god?" Neptune frowned. "If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. But if people offend me, I will do whatever it takes. Back then, at the Dragon God Mountain, because of this hypocrite, I almost fell into your encirclement. This debt must be settled with him." Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. I'm afraid it's not that simple. You finding trouble with the dragon god should also be related to the origin energy in his hands. Neptune said, Lord Neptune is really amazing. You can even think of this. That's right. The origin energy of the divine kingdom is the biggest threat to me. So I have to get rid of the biggest threat first. As Qin Feiyang said this, he suddenly looked at Neptune's right hand that was hidden in his sleeve. Neptune's expression was slightly flustered, and he directly put his right hand behind his back. Don't hide it. You're holding the divine sound stone in your hand, right? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Neptune raised his eyebrows. He was actually discovered. You are indeed more difficult to deal with than the dragon god. While tricking me, you used the divine sound stone to record it, so as to absolve the dragon god. However, I have been using this method since I was a teenager, so in front of me, you don't have to be so secretive. Qin Feiyang chuckled. When Neptune heard this, his face suddenly turned red. It was as if he was mocking him. The method he used when he was a teenager, and now he, an old antique, was still using it? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, It's impossible for you to get an answer from me, let alone expect me to absolve the dragon god. But you clearly said just now that you're targeting him. Neptune sneered. I did say that, and I am indeed targeting the dragon god. But what can this mean? Can it mean that I framed Ji Tianfeng's death? Or does it mean that I'm the one who framed him for leaking the information? It doesn't seem to be the case. Qin Feiyang laughed. Neptune's brows were tightly knitted. Regarding these two matters, Qin Feiyang did not give a clear answer before. But I think you're really interesting. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What do you mean? Neptune raised his eyebrows. The 20 sea gods are all in my hands. The lives of millions of sea clansmen are now in danger. The sea gods' island is destroyed. You're in a very difficult situation now, but even so, you didn't forget to help the dragon god. I really don't know how to evaluate you. Should I say that you're loyal and righteous? Or should I say that you're stupid? Qin Feiyang had a playful look on his face. Don't be too presumptuous. Neptune suppressed his voice. His expression was extremely gloomy. This was a blatant mockery of him. Don't be angry, I'm just stating a fact. Don't be in a hurry to answer me. Think about it carefully. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and with a wave of his hand, the millions of sea clansmen imprisoned in the desert of death immediately appeared in the void beside him. Lord Neptune, seeing Neptune, the group of sea clansmen was immediately overjoyed. What do you mean by this? Neptune looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. He actually took the initiative to release so many of his clansmen? It seemed to be a very good thing, but his heart was beating a little fast because Qin Feiyang couldn't be such a kind person. It's a deal. Of course there must be sincerity. This is my sincerity. I hope that you can also show your sincerity. After all, the sea gods and hundreds of thousands of core members of the sea clansmen are still in my hands. 3 days later, give me an answer on time here. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, opened a space-time tunnel, turned around, and left without looking back. Neptune stared at Qin Feiyang's back, his eyes flickering. He was hesitating should he make a move, but in the end, he gave up this idea, because the sea gods and hundreds of thousands of core members of the sea clansmen were still in danger. In comparison, the millions of clansmen in front of him couldn't be compared to the value of the sea gods and the hundreds of thousands of core members. Moreover, the sea gods and hundreds of thousands of core members were imprisoned in the Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang, as the ruler of the Black Tortoise world, could completely kill all the clansmen before he could do anything. Lord Neptune, you're letting him go just like that. You must kill him. Not only did he imprison us, but he also let his subordinates steal all our divine arts and artifacts. Millions of sea clansmen roared angrily. Shut up! Neptune frowned. What's the big deal about a mere divine art and artifact? 20 sea gods and hundreds of thousands of core members. This is the most important thing. Seeing Neptune angry, millions of sea clansmen shrank their necks and immediately quieted down. Neptune suppressed the anger in his heart and asked, "Are the sea gods and the other clansmen okay now?" "We didn't see them." The group of people shook their heads. "You didn't see them?" Neptune was slightly stunned and frowned. "They weren't imprisoned with you." "No, we were imprisoned in a desert. Apart from Qin Feiyang's 2 subordinates, we didn't see anyone else. Moreover, what imprisoned us is the power of laws of the Black Tortoise world. Therefore, we couldn't escape at all, so we don't know the situation of the sea gods." The group of people spoke at once. Hearing this, Neptune immediately looked up at the dissipating space-time tunnel. They were actually imprisoned separately. This was obviously to not give him a chance to rescue them, because even if he released millions of clansmen, he wouldn't be able to obtain any valuable information. So naturally, he wouldn't be able to come up with a plan to rescue them. What a cunning little bastard. Actually, he didn't know. He was just overthinking. They were imprisoned separately because they didn't want him to know that the hundreds of thousands of core clansmen had been stripped of their ultimate mysteries. Because if he knew, these hundreds of thousands of core clansmen wouldn't be of much value. "Go back. Without this sovereign's order, no one is allowed to leave the sea from now on." Neptune took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his heart as he looked at the millions of clansmen and said solemnly, "Okay." The millions of sea clansmen nodded in fear. Their hearts were filled with despair. Even Lord Neptune couldn't do anything to Qin Feiyang. Chapter 3. Release at 9 a.m. End of chapter. Chapter 40, 181. When Qin Feiyang left the Thousand Phoenix Mountain, he directly returned to the Devil's Land and found that the king and the other 2 were sitting in the tea garden, leisurely sipping tea. "What tea? So fragrant," Qin Feiyang muttered. It was as if he was looking at a sky full of gods and Buddhas and hearing the chanting of scriptures. When he ran over and saw the teapot, he was dumbfounded. In the teapot there was a Bodhi fruit. Golden light flickered, and the divinity was astonishing. Although he had obtained the Bodhi tree for so long, he had never been willing to drink it, because the supreme grade divine tea, just looking at it was enough to satisfy him. But he didn't expect these 3 to be so impolite and directly pluck a Bodhi fruit into the tea. This caused him great heartache. "What expression? Didn't I just pluck a Bodhi fruit from you?" The divine king looked at him unhappily. "Isn't it?" Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He silently looked at the divine king, who was enjoying it, and wanted to cry, but had no tears. "You're really arrogant." Even the supreme grade divine tea was said so lightly. The human race supreme laughed and said, "But thanks to you, I finally tasted the taste of the Bodhi fruit. I have to say this supreme grade divine tea is indeed extraordinary." No, as long as the 3 of you are happy." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. At this point, what else could he say? It was better to be generous. "Truth?" The king looked at him mockingly. Qin Feiyang braced himself and nodded. "Look at you, as if someone stole your treasure." The king shook his head and laughed. "Sit down and drink together." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. It was a good opportunity to taste it. When he picked up the teacup and the tea entered his mouth, his mind suddenly became empty. The fatigue and negative emotions in his heart also seemed to be purified, and his whole body became clean. Moreover, his potential and comprehension seemed to have improved a little. Sure enough, it was true. This Bodhi fruit had great divine power. "How's the talk with Neptune?" the king asked with a smile. "It's all right." Qin Feiyang smiled and looked down at the teacup. If he brought this tea back to Great Qin, wouldn't he be able to create a bunch of geniuses? "Are you all right?" The 3 of them looked at each other. then looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and asked, "What does this mean?" He neither agreed nor refused. Qin Feiyang said, "Ugh." The three of them were dumbfounded. How could this be considered all right? However, he doesn't have a choice unless he gives up on the sea gods and the hundreds of thousands of core clansmen. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That shouldn't be possible. After all, these people are the cornerstones of the oceanic race. If we lose them, the oceanic race's vitality will be greatly damaged. I don't know how long it will take for them to recover. The Divine King said, "Yeah." Therefore, he could only agree. Now, we're just giving him some time to struggle. Qin Feiyang smiled. The Divine King nodded. Suddenly, he thought of something and frowned. "Is there a secret in your soul-sealing valley?" "Soul-sealing valley?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and smiled. "How could there be a secret in that place? Don't give me that. We've been to the entire Black Tortoise world, but when we went to Soul-Sealing Valley, we were stopped by your two subordinates. They wouldn't let us go no matter what. Moreover, we didn't find the sea gods and the hundreds of thousands of core clansmen. I think they should be imprisoned in Soul-Sealing Valley." The Divine King said, "The sea gods were imprisoned in the ancient castle, but their auras were sealed by the ancient castle. Whether it was the three kings or the heavenly Peng and the 20 sea gods, they couldn't sense each other's auras. I really can't hide anything from you." Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. The Divine King was confused. "Why can't we see it?" "Of course we can't. If they see you all strolling around the Black Tortoise world, then wouldn't the matter of our alliance be exposed? Moreover, it's better not to go there. The smell is really bad." Qin Feiyang said. The king said with a dark face, "So you're still thinking for us?" "Of course." Qin Feiyang nodded. The king's mouth twitched. What a slippery little bastard. "Right. Didn't you Lao ask you to gather at the Dragon God Mountain 3 days later?" "It's time to go now." Qin Feiyang looked at the three and said. The Divine King was stunned and said angrily, "Are you in such a hurry to chase us away?" No. Important matters are more important." Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. "What's the hurry? It's not too late to go at night." The Divine King said casually, "Don't. They're from the Central Dynasty after all. We still have to give them face." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Brat, didn't we just take one of your Bodhi fruits? Do you have to be so stingy? Moreover, when we killed Ji Tianfeng back then, you even promised us that you would give us some Bodhi fruits." The Divine King's face darkened. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, you two go ahead and take them." "Really?" The Divine King stood up and asked. "Yes." Qin Feiyang endured the pain in his heart and nodded. The Divine King pursed his lips and looked at the supremacy of the human race. "Since this brat is so filial to us, we won't be polite with him." The supremacy of the human race shook his head and laughed. The Divine King put down the teacup and walked to the two Bodhi trees and took out dozens of exquisite jade boxes. Each jade box was the size of an adult's palm. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang suddenly became anxious. Taking out so many jade boxes, was he planning to sweep them all away? No, at least leave some for him. The Divine King carefully picked the Bodhi fruits and gently put them into the jade boxes. Each jade box could hold 3 of them. Soon, the Divine King had placed 5 jade boxes, which meant that there were 15 pills. Every time the Divine King picked one, Qin Feiyang's heart would ache. When the 10th jade box was filled, the Divine King glanced at Qin Feiyang and couldn't help but want to laugh. Actually, she had been observing Qin Feiyang and saw that the more heartache Qin Feiyang was, the more she wanted to tease him. So, she raised her hand again and gently grabbed a Bodhi fruit. "Enough! Don't pick any more, there's almost none left." Qin Feiyang wailed in his heart. But the divine king suddenly let go of the Bodhi fruit. "You're not picking anymore." Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment and secretly let out a long breath. Fortunately, there was still a lot left. But the next moment, the divine king's voice sounded and asked, "This box is too small. Supreme Being, do you have a bigger one?" Hearing this, Qin Feiyang immediately couldn't sit still. "A bigger box? You can't be like this. Do you have to sweep it all away?" Haha, suddenly, the divine king laughed. With a wave of his hand, 5 jade boxes were left and the rest were put away. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Look at how anxious you are. I'm just teasing you." Huh. Qin Feiyang looked at the divine king in astonishment. The divine king walked over and handed the 5 jade boxes, left outside, to the supreme being of the human race. 10 jade boxes, 30 Bodhi fruits, the 2 of them divided equally. "Do you really think we will be so greedy?" The divine king rolled his eyes at him. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses and smiled embarrassedly. His little heart really couldn't bear it. The king watched the whole process, his face flushed red, and said with a smile, "Let's go to the Dragon God Mountain. This kid is right. After all, he is from the Central Dynasty. We have to give him enough face." "Okay. Anyway, a certain brat can't wait for us to get out of here as soon as possible." The divine king nodded. "Ha!" Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. The divine king suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "By the way, I have good news to tell you." But before the divine king could say anything, the king stopped him and said, "Don't tell him yet." Huh. The divine king was puzzled. Qin Feiyang also had a suspicious look on his face. "What good news?" The king chuckled and said, "When we are ready, we will give him a surprise. No, a shock." "A shock?" The divine king was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "That's right, for things like this, it is better to tell him at the end." "What are you talking about? A surprise one moment, a shock the next." Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 of them in a panic. "Don't worry, it must be good news. That's all for now. Send us out." The king smiled slightly. The more he said this, the more uneasy Qin Feiyang felt. However, there was nothing he could do about these 3 giants, so he could only send them out obediently. Chapter 4182 Dragon God Mountain. At this moment, 3 figures were sitting in the pavilion with a pot of divine tea on the table. The fragrance of the tea assailed their nostrils. It was Yu Lao, the dragon god, and Neptune. Yu Lao tasted the tea, put down the teacup, and shook his head. "It's still not as good as 9th Master Ji's Bodhi fruit. Mine is only a high-grade divine tea, while the Bodhi fruit is a supreme-grade divine tea. Naturally, it can't be compared. However, you know old man Ji's character. He loves tea as much as his life. Not to mention the Bodhi fruit, he can't even bear to part with the Bodhi leaf." Neptune laughed. "This also depends on the person. For example, if I go to him, no matter what, he has to take out the Bodhi fruit to entertain me." Yu Lao smiled proudly. That's right. Neptune nodded, his face full of flattery. But the dragon god, at this moment, he was completely uninterested in any tea and would look up at the sky from time to time. "Don't be anxious, it's still early." Neptune comforted him. "Why should I be anxious? I'm just afraid that Yu Lao will wait for too long. They know that Yu Lao is waiting here, but they aren't more proactive." The dragon god snorted coldly. "Maybe there's something delaying them." Yu Lao laughed hoarsely. "What can happen to them? I think they're doing it on purpose, not giving you face." The dragon god sneered. "Don't talk nonsense." Neptune stared at the dragon god. Wasn't he trying to stir up trouble? Although Yu Lao was more inclined to the Sea Clan and the God Clan, he couldn't ignore the Human Clan, the God Clan, and the Purple-Gold Divine Dragon Clan. Moreover, sometimes it's not good to talk too much. The dragon god pursed his lips, held the teacup, and was about to drink. Swish! But at this moment, A space-time passage appeared in the sky. The king and the other two walked out. "You're really arrogant, making Lao wait for you for so long." The dragon god put down his teacup and looked up at the three of them. The three of them looked at each other and landed in front of the pavilion. The monarch looked at the dragon god and said indifferently, "You didn't say what time it would be. Even if we came at night, there shouldn't be a problem. Also, don't rely on Yu Lao's presence to intimidate others. I haven't settled Ji Tianfeng's debt with you." "You," the dragon god glared at the king. All right. It's not like he's an outsider. Don't talk so much." Yu Lao waved his hand. He raised his head to look at the three people and said with a smile, "Sit down and talk." Yes. The three of them entered the pavilion and sat around a table. Neptune had already poured tea for the three of them. "You are the most trusted people of the Lord Ruler. Now that the Lord Ruler is not here, you have to take on the responsibility of maintaining the order of the Divine Kingdom and protecting the interests of the Divine Kingdom. If you continue to fight like this, won't the enemies of our Divine Kingdom have more opportunities to take advantage of the situation?" Yu Lao sighed, but a glint flashed in his eyes. "What did you say? The Lord Ruler is not here." The monarch and the other two were surprised. "Don't you know?" Yu Lao was suspicious. "I don't know." The monarch shook his head, looked at him in confusion, and asked, "What do you mean?" "When Qin Feiyang and the others broke into the Divine Kingdom, I saw the Lord Ruler. Why are you saying that he's not here now?" Yu Lao looked at the monarch, then looked at the Divine King and the supreme being of the human race. He shook his head and said, "It seems that you really don't know that the Lord Ruler has left the Divine Kingdom." "Huh. When did this happen?" The three of them were very surprised. "On the day Qin Feiyang and the others entered the Divine Kingdom. In short, it's a long story. The Divine Kingdom now depends on you. So, you must not have any internal strife. Because you are all the rulers of the major races, especially the monarch. You are the monarch of the Divine Kingdom, and now you have to bear a greater responsibility than anyone else." Yu Lao looked at the monarch and said in a deep tone, "As the monarch of the Divine Kingdom, I will definitely not shirk my responsibility. But I also won't allow anyone to harm my family like this." The monarch glanced at the dragon god, a cold light flashing in his eyes. The dragon god said gloomily, "How many times do I have to say it? Ji Tianfeng's death has nothing to do with me. It was Qin Feiyang and the others who framed me. Where's the evidence? I only look at the evidence." The monarch sneered. "Don't go too far. I, the dragon god, will lower myself and personally attack Ji Tianfeng." The dragon god said angrily, "Then who knows? Anyway, I saw with my own eyes that he died on your dragon god mountain." The monarch's eyes became colder, seeing the atmosphere getting stiffer and stiffer. Yu Lao looked at Neptune and asked, "How's the matter? I asked you to investigate." "This Qin Feiyang is too cunning. He didn't give me a chance at all." Neptune shook his head regretfully and took out the divine sound transmission stone. An image appeared. It was the lake he recorded at Thousand Phoenix Mountain. After watching the image, Yu Lao sighed. "I really didn't expect that there would be such a difficult person in the Tianyin realm. Yeah, this is the first time I'm afraid of a young man. The feeling he gives me is that of a wily old fox." Neptune sighed and put away the divine sound transmission stone. "In that case, there's still no evidence." The monarch looked at the dragon god and smiled coldly, then looked at Yu Lao and said, "This junior has long heard of your character. You are a person of virtue and prestige, fair and just in doing things. So I hope that this time you can handle it impartially." What was the purpose of Yu Lao coming out of the Central Dynasty? Wasn't it to resolve the grudge between him and the dragon god? If Neptune got the evidence this time, he would have nothing to say. But now Neptune had no evidence. Without evidence, he naturally had to bite the dragon god to death. As for this flattery, it wasn't to curry favor with Yu Lao. Although Yu Lao was from the Central Dynasty, it wasn't worth it for him to grovel to curry favor. In layman's terms, this flattery was actually to set a trap for Yu Lao. He had already guessed Yu Lao's plan. Even if Neptune didn't get the evidence, he had to let go of these grudges and reconcile with the dragon god. So, the king took the initiative to strike first. He flattered Yu Lao, saying that he was highly respected and fair. In this way, Yu Lao would be embarrassed to side with the dragon god. Otherwise, the so-called highly respected and fair would undoubtedly become a joke. As expected, Yu Lao's words were already at the tip of his tongue. But when he heard the king's words, he suddenly didn't know how to speak. If he didn't speak up for the dragon god, the king would definitely not let go. In the future, the grudge between the purple gold divine dragon clan and the beast clan would probably be out of control. But if he continued to speak up for the dragon god, it would be equivalent to him lifting a head and smashing his own foot. In the future, everyone might talk about him behind his back, not knowing right from wrong and siding with the dragon god. For a moment, he was in a difficult position. Yu Lao, I know that you hope that all the major clans will unite as one and face the outside world together. But he started this matter first. You can ask the dragon god. My purple gold divine dragon clan has never taken the initiative to provoke his beast clan. Of course, if it was just an ordinary clansman, I would be too lazy to pursue the matter. But this time the one who died was Ji Tianfeng, my nephew. As the saying goes, before you hit a dog, you have to look at its owner. What did he do to me, the king, by doing this? Say, if it were you, would you let it go? The king looked at Yu Lao and said angrily. Sigh. Yu Lao sighed. It seemed that it was really difficult to leave this matter unsettled. Actually, I also know that the dead can't be brought back to life. Now, it's meaningless for me to pursue the matter, but I just can't get over it. I'm the king and he killed my nephew. Does he still put me in his eyes? Moreover, I'm not important. What's important is those old men. They must pursue the matter to the end. You know their temper. If the dragon god doesn't give them a satisfactory explanation, they won't stop. The king sighed. This old man is indeed clear about the character of these old men. Yu Lao nodded and smiled bitterly. He knew this group of old men too well. Once they were angered, even if he came forward, it would be useless. I do have a way to solve this. The divine king spoke at this time. What solution? Everyone looked at him suspiciously. The dragon god will personally apologize. The divine king said. The dragon god suddenly said angrily, I didn't do it. Why should I apologize? Once he apologized, wouldn't he admit that he did it? Fine. Good intentions are regarded as ill intent. Pretend I didn't say anything. The divine king sneered. Simply didn't know how to appreciate kindness. In fact, her suggestion seemed to be for the dragon god's good, but in fact it was also a trap for the dragon god. Because, as the dragon god thought, if he went to apologize, it would be equivalent to admitting that he did it. In this way, the dragon god would inevitably be spurned by the world in the future. Unfortunately, the dragon god didn't fall for it. However, looking back, besides apologizing, what other solution was there? There was none. Therefore, as long as the dragon god didn't want this matter to be blown up, he had to make a statement. Yu Lao pondered for a while and nodded. This old man thinks that the divine king's suggestion is feasible. Yu Lao. The dragon god looked at him anxiously. Can you think of a better way? Yu Lao asked. The dragon god went silent. I can't think of anything. Then I can only apologize. Besides, it's just an apology. It won't cost you anything. I think this matter is decided. Yu Lao made the final decision. The longer this matter was delayed, the harder it would be to deal with it. I, the dragon god, felt wronged. I invited you all the way from the Central Dynasty, and this is how you solve it? Who doesn't know how to solve it? Let's leave it at that for now. Just bear with it for a while. Neptune knew the dragon god better and knew that this matter might make the dragon god feel resentful. So he quickly comforted him secretly. If even Yu Lao was offended, then this matter would be completely unsolvable. The dragon god glanced at the sea monarch and said telepathically, "All right, for your sake, I'll swallow my anger first." That's right. A little impatience spoils great plans. The Sea King smiled inwardly. The grudge between the dragon god and the purple-gold divine dragon clan will end here. Next, let's discuss the misunderstanding between the sea folk and the dragon god. Yu Lao said, "There's no need to discuss this matter. I believe in the dragon god." The sea folk laughed. "Good brother, not like some people." The dragon god looked at the dragon god gratefully, then stared at the king. The meaning of his words was self-evident. The king directly ignored this and said indifferently, "Since Neptune himself won't pursue it, then there's naturally no need for us outsiders to meddle in other people's business." Divine King Jizun, don't you agree? Yes. The two nodded. Chapter 40, 183. Yu Lao glanced at the three and smiled meaningfully. Your relationship is pretty good now. No matter what you do, you choose to advance and retreat together. Why don't I understand what you mean? The Divine King looked at him suspiciously. Do you really not understand, or are you pretending? Yu Lao chuckled. The three looked at each other with a hint of mockery in their eyes. The Divine King said indifferently, "Since we've already said so much, let's put the problem out there." What problem? Yu Lao was puzzled. You said we were pretending, but you're not pretending. For the Divine Kingdom, we three races have done our best. Take the invasion of the Sky Cloud realm as an example. How much did we sacrifice? And what did the Beast race and the Sea race pay? It can be said that our three races have done no wrong to anyone. But what about the Lord Ruler and your central dynasty? How did you treat us? Not to say that you treated us better than the Beast race and the Sea race, but you should at least treat us the same. But now we who have wholeheartedly served the Lord Ruler are inferior to the Sea race and the Beast race who have been standing by and watching the show. May I ask, is this fair to us? The Divine King looked at Yu Lao aggressively. Yu Lao frowned. We always thought that the Lord Ruler was fair to us. But it wasn't until Ji Tianfeng was killed that we learned that the Dragon God and Neptune were both bestowed with the power of origin. If the Lord Ruler was fair and bestowed us with the power of origin, would Qin Feiyang and the others be so arrogant until now? So, we were forced into a corner and could only huddle together for warmth. The Divine King shook his head and sighed. Yu Lao looked embarrassed when he heard this. Saying it so bluntly, he really didn't give him any face. The king waved his hand and said, "Divine King, there's nothing to complain about. No matter how others treat us, as long as we have a clear conscience, it's fine. I'm not as magnanimous as you. Since the Lord Ruler has bestowed upon Neptune and the Dragon God the power of the origin, he has naturally given them the courage of the Divine Kingdom. So, in the future, I'll have to count on you two to deal with Qin Feiyang and the others." The Divine King looked at Neptune and the Dragon God. "Are you planning to wash your hands of this matter?" Neptune frowned. "I want to, but do I have the ability? You've all seen Qin Feiyang's life and death laws and will of the heavenly Tao. Apart from your origin energy, who else can suppress him? Therefore, this heavy responsibility is incumbent upon all of you. Don't let down Lord Ruler's expectations of you all. As for my God clan, I will assist you in the future. My God clan has sacrificed a lot. More than half of my direct clansmen died at the hands of Qin Feiyang. I don't want to end up in a situation where my clan is exterminated." The Divine King sighed and then lowered his head in silence. Neptune and the Dragon God looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. "Divine King, you're exaggerating. Lord Ruler and the Central Dynasty don't have any selfish motives. We didn't give you the power of the origin back, then purely because Lord Ruler left in a hurry. All in all, to deal with Qin Feiyang and the others, all the major races have to work together. Yu Lao chuckled. No selfish motives? Even he didn't believe these words. But now he had to appease the Divine King. Otherwise, if he really didn't do anything, the Divine Kingdom situation would be even worse. Yu Lao, don't mind her. She's just saying it out of anger. The Divine King smiled apologetically. That's right. How can the Divine King just stand by and watch the grudge between the God Clan and Qin Feiyang? The Supreme Being of the human clan also smiled. That's right, that's right. When we capture Qin Feiyang in the future, we'll leave it to you, Divine King, to deal with. When the time comes, you can find him to settle the old and new grudges. Yu Lao smiled and glanced at everyone. Back to the previous question, Neptune, you don't care. But it doesn't mean that your clansmen don't care. You've seen how much the sea race has against the dragon god now. This is also a problem I'm thinking about now. Neptune sighed. It was useless for him to believe in the dragon god. It had to be believed by his clansmen. Otherwise, the relationship between the Beast Clan and the Beast Clan could never be repaired. In fact, the crux of all the problems lies with Qin Feiyang and the others. As long as they die, all the problems will be solved. When will Qin Feiyang ask you out next time? Yu Lao asked. 3 days later, still at Thousand Phoenix Mountain. Neptune said truthfully. Then what's his condition? The Divine King was curious. The origin power in my hands. Neptune smiled bitterly. What? The Divine King raised his eyebrows and sneered. This kid's ambition is not small. The origin power of my Divine Kingdom is not something he can touch. Let me tell you, no matter what, you can agree to his conditions. I don't want to agree either. But what about my clansmen? I can't just watch them die. Neptune sighed. Then do you know the consequences of him getting the origin power? Now, his strength has already surpassed us. When he gets the origin power in your hands, we won't be able to suppress him. As for your clansmen, let them die. The Divine King waved his hand and said casually, What do you mean? Neptune suddenly stood up, glared at the Divine King, and shouted, All the Oceanic clansmen and hundreds of thousands of core clansmen. You want me to just watch them die? They really aren't your clansmen. Don't you feel sorry for them? What a joke. I'm thinking about the big picture. As for whether I feel sorry for them or not, let me tell you, no one knows this better than me. Back then, I watched more than half of the direct clansmen of the God clan die in front of me. The Divine King shouted angrily. Because of this, we can't repeat the same mistake. Neptune's eyes were gloomy. Fine, you can do whatever you want with this matter. But if you want me to help, it will never happen. Don't say that the God clan is not righteous. Back then, when the God clan suffered such a calamity, apart from the human clan and the purple-gold divine dragon clan, did the Oceanic clansmen and the Beast clan help us? Not to mention help, not even a word of concern after the incident. They might even be laughing at the God clan behind our backs. The Divine King sneered, put down his teacup, got up, looked at Yu Lao, and said, Anyway, what happened here has nothing to do with the God clan, so I'll take my leave first. After saying that, he opened a space-time passage and turned to leave. I'll go comfort her. The human clan Supreme Being's eyes flashed, looked at Yu Lao, smiled, and also got up and entered the space-time passage. Elder Yu, take a look. What kind of attitude is this? The dragon god was furious. Neptune also returned to the stone bench, lowered his head, his face full of anger. Sigh. Yu Lao couldn't help but sigh secretly and said telepathically, This is all your fault. Why are you blaming us? The dragon god frowned. Back then, when the God clan suffered a calamity, no matter what, even if it was just an act, you should have gone to show some concern. Besides, Who told you to expose your origin power so early? Isn't this causing trouble for us? If it were you, wouldn't you be dissatisfied if I didn't give you the origin power? Yu Lao couldn't help but feel a little angry in his heart. Hearing this, the dragon god's pupils immediately shrank. Yu Lao took a deep breath, looked up at the king, and said, "First, settle the grudge between your purple-gold divine dragon clan and the dragon god. Now, bring the dragon god to the village and apologize to those old guys in person." "Okay." The king nodded, got up, and opened a space-time passage. "Wait." Suddenly, Yu Lao stopped the king, pondered for a while, glanced at the dragon god, and sighed. "This old man will go too." He was really worried about this dragon god. When the time comes, the grudge will not be settled, but it will become even worse. In the village, under an old locust tree, a group of old men and Yu Lao sat together. The king and Neptune stood at the side. The dragon god stood in front of the group of old men, but they didn't say anything. The atmosphere was a little heavy. Yu Lao looked at the group of old men and said helplessly, "I say, you guys have been thinking for so long. Can't you make a statement first?" "What statement? Did you say anything to us?" Boss G looked at him suspiciously. "Ah." Yu Lao was stunned and asked, "Then what are you guys thinking about for so long?" "We were thinking, what are we going to eat for lunch today?" Boss G said indifferently. Yu Lao's mouth twitched. "Ji Lao," or turned to look at the second young mistress and waved. "Old woman, go cook, just count little Wang in. As for the others, let them drink outside." The second young mistress chuckled and nodded. "Okay. Hey. I say, you damn old man, I came all the way here to see you, and you don't even have tea or food. Is this how you treat your guests?" Yu Lao stared at Ji Lao, or with dissatisfaction. "Are you a guest? Besides, did we invite you?" Ji Lao looked at him seriously and asked. Yu Lao's face darkened. "Lao, don't talk nonsense with him. Let's go fishing and have lunch." Boss G stood up and walked to the entrance of the village without looking back. Suddenly he turned to the dragon god and said, "You don't have much time left. Hurry up and find evidence. Otherwise, don't blame us old men for not giving you face." The dragon god clenched his fists, his heart filled with anger. He came to apologize in person, but was humiliated like this. Yu Lao also frowned and said angrily, "Boss G, can you not go overboard?" "What did you say?" Boss G suddenly turned and stared at Yu Lao. He was like an awakened beast, making Yu Lao's heart panic. Looking at the other elders, they were also staring at Elder Yu with unkind gazes. Yu Lao rubbed his forehead and said helplessly, "Dragon God is also a junior in front of you. As a senior, can't you be more magnanimous?" "Magnanimous? Ji Tianfeng is my great-grandson. How do you expect me to be magnanimous?" "Why don't you call your grandson out now and let me slap him to death? Then I'll apologize to you. If you can forgive me, then I'll forgive the dragon god." Boss G sneered. Chapter 40, 184. "Aren't you talking nonsense with me?" Yu Lao's face darkened. "Then what are you doing? You came all the way from the Central Dynasty just to ask the dragon god to come over and apologize? It's that simple. Do I need you to come?" Boss G despised. The dragon god agreed with this sentence. Inviting this person from the Central Dynasty didn't help much. Yu Lao frowned and said in a deep voice, "Old thing, don't be so shameless. What, you still want to fight?" Hearing this, Ji Laosher suddenly stood up and stared at Yu Lao, his eyes flashing with cold light. Yu Lao's eyelids twitched. How could he be so confused and forget where he was now? In this village, no matter how strong you are or how high your status is, it's useless, because none of the old people here are easy to mess with. Apologize, that's fine too. Suddenly, Jijio spoke. Yu Lao finally saw hope and turned to look at Ji Jiu, waiting for him to continue. Ji Jiu glanced at Yu Lao, then looked at the dragon god and said, "However, it's too insincere for you to stand and apologize." The dragon god raised his eyebrows. If he didn't stand and apologize, should he kneel and apologize? Yes, kneel and apologize. Ji Jiu nodded. Impossible, the dragon god shouted resolutely. The ruler of the beast race, the dragon god who dominated a region, actually wanted him to kneel and apologize? Moreover, this matter wasn't done by him in the first place. Being able to come and apologize was already his greatest limit. How could he kneel now? Elder Yu also frowned. He looked at old Jiu and said, "Isn't this request of yours too much?" "If you think it's too much, then get lost. Don't be an eyesore here," Ji Jiu said coldly. Yu Lao suddenly burned with anger. Asking him to get lost? No one had ever dared to say this word to him. What? Do you really think that you're superior to us just because you're from the Central Dynasty? Do you really think that we have to be respectful to you? Master Ji Jiu stared coldly at Yu Lao. Yu Lao clenched his fists. His face was frighteningly gloomy. In short, I'll just say one thing. If you can kneel down and apologize, we will accept it. No, get out of my sight right now. When the time is up, we will arrive at Dragon God Mountain on time. The last sentence was the most important. If you don't kneel down and apologize to us today, we will kill our way to Dragon God Mountain in the future. At that time, even if you kneel down and apologize, it will be useless. Yu Lao said gloomily, Dragon God, kneel down and apologize to them. Impossible. The dragon god's expression was extremely malevolent. You also want to disobey this old man's orders? Yu Lao shouted. I don't dare, but kneeling down and apologizing will never happen. If you want to kill your way to Dragon God Mountain, this sovereign will accompany you at any time. The dragon god stared at Master Ji Jiu with a cold smile, then opened a space-time passage and turned to leave. Stop right there, Yu Lao shouted, but the dragon god turned a deaf ear. Good, good, good. Don't regret it. This old man will return to the Central Dynasty and ask the Emperor to confiscate your origin power. Yu Lao looked at him angrily. What? The dragon god's body stiffened. Neptune's gaze also suddenly trembled. He hurriedly ran to the dragon god's side and whispered, Don't be impulsive. Without the origin power, not to mention Qinfang, even the purple gold divine dragon clan can kill you without anyone knowing. The dragon god clenched his hands tightly, his face full of anger. I know you're upset, but now there's no other way. Whether it's the purple gold divine dragon clan or Yu Lao, we can't offend them. You'll have to bear with it for now. When we find evidence in the future, you can fight back. Neptune secretly advised. The dragon god turned to look at Neptune. Listen to me, and trust me, I'll definitely help you. Neptune transmitted his voice. Thank you for always standing by my side. The dragon god secretly said, of all the people in the divine kingdom, only Neptune had always trusted him unconditionally. There's nothing to thank me for. Let's get through this first. There's still plenty of time in the future. When he said, there's still plenty of time in the future, a trace of killing intent flashed across Neptune's eyes. The dragon god understood. He turned to look at Master Ji Jiu and nodded. All right, this sovereign will do as you wish. Saying so, he knelt on the ground, lowered his head, gritted his teeth, and spoke word by word. I apologize. Please forgive me. The elders were a bit surprised. He actually knelt down and apologized. It wasn't easy for the dragon god to do that. Yu Lao spoke in a low voice. He's already knelt down and apologized. What else do you want? I didn't do anything. Boss Ji turned to the king and spoke. The dragon god has shown his sincerity. Let's end this here. Yes. The king nodded. Boss G then looked at the dragon god and spoke. Get up, the ground is dirty. The dragon god rose to his feet and swept his gaze across the group of elders and monarchs. Then he turned around and left without saying a word. This junior will take his leave. Neptune clasped his fist at the elders and smiled, then chased after him. Yu Lao glanced at Boss G's group with a dark expression, then opened a space-time tunnel and prepared to leave. Not staying for dinner? Boss G asked. We've been friends for so many years. It's rare for us to get together. We should at least have a few drinks. Ji Lao chuckled as well. I'm afraid the wine here will shorten my lifespan. Yu Lao snorted, then stepped into the space-time tunnel and disappeared without a trace. Old thing. Boss G smiled coldly and looked at Ji Laoshi. Did you record it? Yes. Ji Laoshi bared his teeth, then raised his arm and opened his palm, revealing a transmission stone. Grandpa, what are you doing? Looking at the transmission stone in Ji Laoshi's hand, the king was shocked. Ji Tianfeng's death. Of course, we have to give everyone an explanation. Or else how can the purple gold divine dragon clan establish our dominance in the divine fruit market? Boss G smirked and looked at Ji Laoshi. Send the recorded video to Little Wang. All right. Ji Lao nodded. Buzz. The next moment, the king received the video, which was the scene of the dragon god kneeling and apologizing. The king frowned. Grandpa, if this video gets out, won't the dragon god hate us for the rest of our lives? It's just a dragon god. If he hates us, then so be it. Spread it out immediately. I'd like to see who dares to bully the purple gold divine dragon clan after this. Boss G waved his hand. Just a dragon god? The king smiled bitterly. Only these old men in front of him would dare to say such words. He asked, You're not going to keep me for dinner? What's there to eat? Are you a rice bucket? Scram! Boss G glared at him and shouted. Why did you suddenly turn against me? The king opened the space-time tunnel and left with a bitter heart. Ji Laoshi looked at the king's back and asked Boss G in confusion. Big brother, when did Little Wang piss you off again? Why are you so angry at him? He didn't teach his son well. If I don't get angry at him, who should I get angry at? You. Boss G glared at him. Ha! Ji Laoshi laughed dryly and said, Then you should vent your anger at him. But why don't I understand what you mean by not teaching your son well? You must be a pig in your previous life. Boss G said in annoyance and walked towards the river alone. What do you mean? Ji Laoshi was stunned. Ji Laoshi shook his head and said, Big brother is angry about young Master Ji and the others challenging those two young men. Ji Laoshi was stunned and frowned. That's nothing. If they can win, of course it's nothing. But the point is they lost to those two young men. Moreover, they took the initiative to challenge them. How embarrassing is that? Ji Laoshi shook his head and sighed. Seems like it. If it was Qin Feiyang, the outcome would probably be different. Ji Laoshi nodded and muttered. Qin Feiyang? If young Master Ji and the others were as outstanding as Qin Feiyang and the others, then Big Brother wouldn't be angry. Moreover, those two young men were brought by Chief Yu Lao. If they lost to Chief Yu Lao's people, Big Brother would naturally be even angrier. Ji Laoshi smiled. Ji Laoshi nodded and said, It seems that Big Brother still hasn't let go of what happened back then. Let go? With Big Brother's temper, is it possible? Ji Laoshi shook his head. It had to be said. The king's efficiency was quite good. In less than half a day, the news of the dragon god kneeling down and apologizing spread throughout the 4 great continents. Almost everyone knew. Everyone had a new understanding of the power of the purple gold divine dragon clan. No matter who you were, as long as you provoked the purple gold divine dragon clan, they would not let you go. Get lost! Dragon God Mountain. Looking at the beast gods around him, the dragon god roared. These beast gods were here to report this matter. When the dragon god heard about it, he naturally couldn't hold back the anger in his heart. The group of beast gods looked at each other and could only turn around and leave. It seems that this matter really stimulated the dragon god greatly. What a joke! When has the dragon god suffered such humiliation? This Qin Feiyang really deserves to die 10,000 times. Now, the beast race had almost become a rat on the street because of the matter between Ji Tianfeng and the sea race. Even these beast gods were no longer as surprised as before when they met people from the other races. There was only disgust in their eyes. And all of this was caused by Qin Feiyang and the others. Therefore, they hated Qin Feiyang and the others to the bone. However, although their killing intent was strong, they didn't dare to make a move. Qin Feiyang's powerful strength and terrifying methods were like a mountain pressing down on their heads, making them almost suffocate. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. 1,000 Phoenix Mountain. Neptune arrived as promised. Seeing that Qin Feiyang hadn't arrived yet, he closed his eyes and waited silently. In the distance, a few people happened to pass by, and when they saw Neptune, a trace of surprise appeared on their faces. That seemed to be Neptune? What was Neptune doing here? Could it be he had an agreement with Qin Feiyang? Immediately, the few of them stopped in their tracks and landed on the mountain peak below, looking at Neptune from afar. Time passed quietly. About half an hour passed. Swish! Finally, a space-time passage appeared. A familiar figure walked out of the passage. At the same time, Neptune opened his eyes and looked up at the figure. 2 cold lights burst out of his eyes. Chapter 4185. It was Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang walked to the opposite side of Neptune and said with a faint smile, "These few days you must have discussed with the dragon god and Yu Lao on how to deal with me." "How do you know about Yu Lao?" Neptune said in a low voice. This, Qin Feiyang's lips curled up slightly, pursing a playful smile as he asked, "If I say that someone from your sea tribe tipped me off, would you believe me?" "What kind of joke is this?" Neptune couldn't help but sneer. First, he instigated the relationship between the dragon god and the purple-gold divine dragon clan. Then he instigated the relationship between the dragon god and the sea tribe. Now he wanted to instigate the internal relationship of the sea tribe. This person was really insidious. "All right, I'll tell you." Qin Feiyang laughed. Neptune immediately held his breath and waited for the result. "Actually, it's someone from your sea tribe who tipped me off. But it's not convenient for me to reveal who it is. If you have the ability, go and investigate it yourself." Qin Feiyang smiled. Neptune suddenly clenched his hands and said in a low voice, "Do you think it's fun to play with me?" "Forget it if you don't believe me." Qin Feiyang pursed his lips and said indifferently, "Have you considered my conditions?" Neptune frowned. Could it be that there was really a spy in the sea tribe? Qin Feiyang said, "This is already the 3rd and last judgment. Don't test my patience." Huff! Neptune took a deep breath and temporarily put aside the matter of the spy. He said in a low voice, "Origin source strength is impossible. You can state other conditions, and I will try my best to satisfy you." "Other conditions," Qin Feiyang muttered, pondered for a while, and said with a smile, "Then 100 ultimate profound meanings of ultimate laws." "You must be dreaming. 100 ultimate profound meanings of ultimate laws. Even if you want me to snatch them, there's nowhere to do so." Neptune roared. He really dared to speak. In his entire life, he had never seen so many ultimate law inheritances. "That's right. You won't be able to take out 100 inheritances. As for the others, I'm not interested in them. So, I'll take the origin energy. I'll give you 3 breaths to consider." Qin Feiyang smiled. Neptune's face sank. The source strength was the only method he had to suppress the 3 races, and it was also the only method he had to deal with Qin Feiyang. Once he gave it to Qin Feiyang, Wouldn't Qin Feiyang be able to slaughter the sea race in the future? 3 breaths have passed. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. The next moment, a corpse appeared in front of him. His entire body reeked of stench. He was one of the hundreds of thousands of core members of the Sea clan imprisoned in the Soul-Sealing Valley. At this moment, apparently he was already dead. Now, with every breath that passes, I'll kill a member of your oceanic race, until all of you are dead. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. With a wave of his hand, the corpse of the young oceanic race flew in front of Neptune. Neptune looked down at the corpse, his face full of grief and indignation. At this moment, another corpse appeared. This was an old oceanic race with a foul stench on his body. There was no sign of life. With a wave of Qin Feiyang's hand, the corpse flew in front of Neptune again. Stop, stop! Neptune roared, glaring at Qin Feiyang. Killing without spilling blood while talking and laughing, this was a devil. But before his voice faded, a third corpse appeared. This was a middle-aged oceanic race man who had already died. His eyes were wide open, filled with resentment and fear before his death. It looked quite terrifying. Qin Feiyang was completely unmoved. He kept his word and killed a person every breath. Okay. I agree. The appearance of 3 corpses in a row made Neptune extremely fearful. He quickly nodded. The death of every core member was a loss for the oceanic race. Wouldn't it be better if you did this earlier? You'll only be satisfied after killing 3 members of your race. Qin Feiyang smiled. Looking at the smile on Qin Feiyang's face, Neptune was more and more certain that this was the reincarnation of a devil, because no one could be so calm when doing such a thing. I have to see them first, Neptune said in a deep voice. You're not qualified to negotiate. Of course. You don't have to doubt my character. I mean what I say. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. He definitely couldn't let Neptune see these oceanic race people first, because once Neptune saw them first, the fact that these oceanic race people were deprived of their ultimate profound meaning would be exposed. At that time, maybe Neptune wouldn't rescue them anymore. Then wouldn't his efforts these days be in vain? So he had to get the origin source energy first. I really don't trust your character. Neptune's face was gloomy. Okay, then I'll continue. Qin Feiyang smiled. Don't. Neptune's eyes trembled and hurriedly reached out to stop Qin Feiyang. His eyes flickered for a moment before he nodded and said, Okay, I hope you can keep your word. After saying that, he waved his hand and a ray of origin source energy appeared. It was like a cluster of flames, only the size of an adult's palm, but it exuded a terrifying aura. Qin Feiyang looked at this ray of origin source energy, and his eyes couldn't help but shine. As long as he got this ray of origin source energy, he could go to the dragon god to collect his debt. He had long found this bastard an eyesore. Neptune was still a little worried and frowned. Why don't you make a blood oath to guarantee that you will get the origin source energy and return the sea god and hundreds of thousands of people to me? Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and decisively made a blood oath. He didn't ignore Neptune on this matter. As long as he got the origin source energy, these Sea clan people would lose their value. What was the point of keeping them in his hands? When the oath seal descended, Neptune was completely relieved. With a wave of his hand, the origin source energy cut through the sky and flew in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was extremely excited and said, Long Qin, you can deprive Tianpeng and the other sea gods of their ultimate meaning. Okay, Devil's Land. When Long Chen heard this, he immediately got up and went to the castle. Where are they? Neptune asked. Don't worry, I will definitely return them to you. Qin Feiyang played with the origin source energy. With a thought, a loud clang sounded, and the origin source energy turned into a 3-foot-long sword. With another thought, the origin source energy turned into a shield. It was really formed by his heart. With this origin source energy, the dragon god was nothing to be afraid of. Just you wait. Your death is coming, Qin Feiyang whispered. What did you say? Neptune heard Qin Feiyang's muttering and immediately became vigilant. Don't be nervous. I'm not talking about you. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Not good. Yu Lao, dragon god, inner demons, Lu Jiajin, all of you are here. At this time, Mu Qing's voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. And Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked around. Seeing this, Neptune also looked around, his eyes full of suspicion. You still haven't given up. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and looked at Neptune with ridicule in his eyes. What do you mean? Neptune frowned. Qin Feiyang sneered. Yu Lao and the dragon god. Weren't you the one who arranged it in advance? What? They're here. I really didn't know they would come. Neptune's face changed. I don't know. Qin Feiyang looked at Neptune's expression and didn't seem to be lying. It seemed that it was indeed Yu Lao and the dragon god who acted on their own. He asked, How far are they? Very close. Perhaps they will arrive in the next moment. Mu Qing replied. Qin Feiyang frowned and looked at Neptune. I'll go first. I'll let them go later. After saying that, he opened a space-time tunnel and ran in without looking back. Neptune subconsciously chased after him, but suddenly stopped. With the blood oath, he wasn't afraid that Qin Feiyang would go back on his words. Sure enough, as Mu Qing expected, just as Qin Feiyang left, several figures descended on Thousand Phoenix Mountain. It was Yu Lao, the dragon god, the inner demons, and Lu Jiajin. Where are they? Yu Lao asked. They seem to know that you're here, so they left first. Neptune sighed. Left? Dragon god looked at the surrounding void in a daze and said angrily, Aren't you going to stop him? I've already given him the origin force. How can I stop him? If he didn't kill me just now, I should have already gone to burn incense and pray. Neptune said angrily. Without the origin force, it would be too easy for Qin Feiyang to kill him. Tong Tian Ai is really a hindrance. Yu Lao clenched his fist slightly. If he didn't have the all-seeing eye, how could Qin Feiyang grasp their whereabouts so clearly? Sigh. Neptune sighed. This was the terror of the strongest battle soul. What was even more terrifying was that most of the possessors of the strongest battle soul were still by Qin Feiyang's side. Then did he say when he would let them go? Inner demons asked. He will definitely let them go, because he made a blood oath. If he didn't know that you're here, he might have already let them go. As soon as Neptune finished speaking, the voice transmission stone rang. He quickly took it out. An old man from the Sea Clan appeared and hurriedly said, Lord, the Sea Clan is back. Where? Neptune quickly asked. Sea God Island. The old man from the Sea Clan said. Although the Sea God Island was destroyed, it was rebuilt in the past few days. So fast? Neptune was stunned. But the old man from the Sea Clan hesitated and said in a deep voice, You should come back and see for yourself. As soon as Neptune heard this, an uneasy premonition arose in his heart. He immediately put away the voice transmission stone, opened a space-time tunnel, and descended on the Sea God Island. Yu Lao and the other three followed closely behind. The sky above the island was currently filled with a sea of people. Almost all of the Sea Clan on the Sea God Island were here. They gathered together and looked at Tian Peng and the other sea gods in the middle. In addition to Tian Peng and the other sea gods, the hundreds of thousands of core members of the Sea Clan were all covered in a foul stench. Moreover, whether it was Tian Peng, the sea gods, or the hundreds of thousands of core members, they were all like a pile of mud, paralyzed in the void. Their faces were ashen and filled with despair. Get out of the way. The Sea King's voice rang out. Lord! Everyone quickly retreated to the side. The old man from the sea clan who had sent the message earlier ran in front of Neptune and pointed at the sea gods, saying with a sorrowful expression, "Look at them! What have they become now?" "What's going on?" Neptune glanced at them. They had already escaped from the clutches of Qin Feiyang, so why were they still in despair? Chapter 4186. Lord Neptune, you have to uphold justice for us. This Qin Feiyang and Long Chen are beasts. When the hundreds of thousands of corps members saw Neptune arrive, they all knelt down in the air and shouted. Neptune glanced at the group of people. These people had their sea of qi destroyed and had no cultivation base. So for a time, whether it was Neptune or the dragon god, they did not notice that these people's ultimate meaning had been taken away. Tianpeng? When the dragon god saw Tianpeng, his eyes trembled slightly. He hurriedly walked over and asked, "What happened to you?" "Lord, dragon god." Tianpeng's body trembled as he slowly raised his head to look at the dragon god. His tears immediately flowed down as he shouted, "Lord, I beg you, you must kill Qin Feiyang and Long Chen. These two bastards, actually, don't worry, speak slowly." The dragon god comforted him. What the hell happened? Why were even Tianpeng and the various sea gods so desperate? One must know. Tianpeng and the various sea gods, what kind of storms and waves had they not experienced? Under normal circumstances, it was absolutely impossible for them to be so desperate. You are the sea god of the sea clan, the beast god of the beast clan, under the watchful eyes of so many people. What kind of scandal is this? Quickly get up and explain clearly. Neptune stared at the group of people and shouted. However, no one got up. The various sea gods seemed to be numb and did not even have the slightest reaction. In the face of such a thing, the stronger one was, the greater the blow one would receive. It was just as the Sea King had said. They were the sea gods of the Sea Clan and had always been high and mighty. But now, all their ultimate meaning had been taken away and they fell from the sky to the ground. How could experts like them withstand such a change? Sigh. The old ancestor of the Sea Clan who sent the message sighed and looked at Neptune. Lord, their ultimate meaning. At this point, the voice of the old ancestor of the Sea Clan also became choked. The grief and indignation on his face became even more intense. "Speak," Neptune bellowed. The old man of the sea race looked at the sea gods and roared furiously. Their ultimate mysteries have been stolen by Qin Feiyang and Long Chen. What deprived them of their ultimate profound? Neptune trembled, both physically and mentally. The dragon god and Yu Lao were also dumbfounded. The ultimate profundities of the heavenly Peng, the sea beasts, and the hundreds of thousands of core members of the sea tribe were all taken away. Yes, the ultimate profound that we worked so hard to comprehend was all taken away by them. Without the ultimate profound, what's the point of living? I hate it. Hundreds of thousands of core members of the oceanic species roared towards the sky, their voices filled with hatred. Impossible. Neptune came back to his senses and shook his head vigorously. He ran to the sea gods and roared, "Tell me, is this real? Hurry up and tell me." He was like a madman, shaking the sea gods with all his might. 20 sea gods, hundreds of thousands of core members. This was the foundation of the sea tribe, the pillars of the sea tribe. Now that their ultimate profound had been taken away, it meant that their foundation had collapsed and their pillars had fallen. Therefore, he could not accept this fact. The eyes of the 20 sea gods were empty and colorless. "Hurry up and answer me! I beg you, answer me. This is not real," Neptune roared hysterically. In the end, he squatted on the ground powerlessly and cried bitterly. The sea tribe was finished. It was completely finished. What? Soon, the king, the divine king, the human race, and the beast gods received this news. They all stood up in shock, their faces filled with disbelief. The ultimate profound of the heavenly Peng, The sea beasts and hundreds of thousands of core members of the sea tribe were all taken away by Qin Feiyang and Long Qin? What kind of joke was this? This kind of thing, unless they were willing, who could take it away? Could it be the golden-winged Wolf King? In a large hall, the king looked at Heavenly Lord Ji below and asked. This was because the white-eyed wolf had the ability to take away the ultimate profound of the laws. It's not the golden-winged Wolf King. Heavenly Lord Ji shook his head. It's not. Then, who among them still possesses this ability? The king was surprised. I'm afraid you'll never think of this person in your life. He is Long Qin. Heavenly Lord Ji said word by word. What? Long Qin? The king was dumbfounded. That's right. According to the core members of the sea tribe who suffered, this Long Qin seems to have mastered a secret technique called the soul controlling technique, which can turn all living things in the world into puppets. They will do whatever he wants them to do. The most terrifying thing is that this soul controlling technique can still retain their consciousness even if they are turned into puppets. Furthermore, once the white-eyed wolves' battle souls are stripped of their laws, they'll completely vanish. They won't be able to be used by themselves. But with the soul-controlling art, the laws that they've stripped away will be dissolved. It's the same as the inheritance. There's no difference. Heavenly Lord Ji said. Soul, controlling technique, the king murmured. His face was full of disbelief. Was this the reason why Qin Feiyang valued Long Qin so much? If that was the case, how many ultimate profound inheritances did Qin Feiyang have in his hands? Heavenly Lord Ji said suspiciously, Father, you, the divine king, and Ji Zun went to the Black Tortoise world a few days ago. Didn't you find this? No. The king shook his head and smiled bitterly. These sea tribe members have been imprisoned in the Black Tortoise world's soul-sealing valley. At that time, we also wanted to go and take a look, but we were stopped by Qin Feiyang's two subordinates. Later, when we questioned this kid, he said he would give us a surprise. I think this is the surprise he was talking about. This is a scare, okay? Heavenly Lord Ji was taken aback. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. This bastard! You've mastered such a terrifying secret technique, yet you didn't tell us? The king was furious. How should I put it? After all, this matter is of great importance. If it were you or me, we would definitely keep it a secret. However, this soul-controlling technique is truly too astonishing. With this soul-controlling technique, wouldn't the ultimate profundity be easily obtained? I reckon that this is why they came to our divine kingdom. There aren't many people in the sky cloud realm who have mastered the ultimate profoundness of the strongest law, so this soul-controlling technique is useless. However, our divine kingdom is different. There are countless people who have mastered the ultimate profoundness of the strongest law. Just by casually setting up a trap, you can obtain a large number of inheritances. It's hard to imagine how many experts will be born by Qin Feiyang's side in the future who have mastered the will of the heavenly Tao. Heavenly Lord Ji was filled with emotions. Fortunately, he had chosen to reconcile with Qin Feiyang back then. Otherwise, when he faced Qin Feiyang in the future, he would feel his scalp tingle just thinking about it. Most importantly, if they became enemies with Qin Feiyang, the purple-gold divine dragon clan might follow in the footsteps of the mermen in the future. This brat, he's simply treating our divine kingdom as a big treasure trove. But then again, who exactly is this Long Qin? He has mastered such a terrifying secret technique. You have to know that ordinary secret techniques can't control an overlord at this level, let alone make them willingly extract the ultimate profoundness. The king was curious. Then why do we ask great-grandpa and great-grandma to ask Dong Jingyang? If Dong Jingyang is so familiar with them, then he must know Long Qin very well. Heavenly Lord Ji said, I know Long Qin's background. He's a dragon from the ancient world. But his father, Lord Jiao, also asked Dong Jingyan last time. But Dong Jingyan was very cautious about this question and didn't answer directly. He only said that Long Chen's father is a super powerful grand cultivator. He also said that even Qin Feiyang is no match for Long Chen's father. The king frowned. What? Heavenly Lord Ji was shocked. Qin Feiyang had mastered 3,000 incarnations, the Eye of Heaven, the Dharma laws of life and death, and 2 will of heaven. With such strength, he still wasn't a match for Long Chen's father? How is this possible? If so, how powerful was Long Chen's father? Now, we can basically confirm that the main reason why Qin Feiyang is so good to Long Chen must be the reason. But then again, the way these two get along is really strange. They have a blood feud, but they act like brothers. The king shook his head. This might be where their charm lies. Heavenly Lord Ji said with a smile. Maybe. The king nodded and a smile appeared on his face. But looking at their performance now, there's a high chance that they will overthrow the ruler in the future. Yes. I've roughly calculated that Qin Feiyang should be able to obtain 40 to 50,000 ultimate intensive laws from the sea gods and the hundreds of thousands of core members of the merfolk. This is a conservative estimate. There might be more. With so many ultimate intensive laws, how many will of heaven can be created? Once these people come out of seclusion, I guess it'll be the time when Qin Feiyang officially declares war on the central dynasty. Father, we have to be prepared. Heavenly Lord Ji said. Yes. The king nodded. Buzz. Suddenly, the voice transmission stone rang. The king took out the stone, and the dragon god's figure appeared. The king was slightly stunned and said with a smile, Lord Dragon God, what can I do for you? Are you gloating over my misfortune? The dragon god stared at the king gloomily. Gloating? What do you mean? I don't understand. The king was puzzled. I don't believe that you haven't received news about Tian Peng and the other sea gods. The dragon god said in a deep voice. What happened to them? I really don't know. Have they been rescued? The king was doubtful. The dragon god clenched his fists and said, Yu Lao ordered you, the divine king, and the autarchs to come to the sea gods' island immediately. There's something important to discuss. What is it? The king was puzzled. You'll know when you come. Remember, it's immediately. After saying that, the dragon god's figure quickly dissipated. Heavenly Lord Ji retracted his gaze and looked at the king. Father, what are they trying to do? The king thought for a while and shook his head with a smile. What else? They must be discussing how to deal with Qin Feiyang and the others. After all, Qin Feiyang has so many ultimate arcanas. If we don't quickly come up with a plan, not to mention the 4 continents, even the central dynasty will be threatened. So, the central dynasty is going all out. Heavenly Lord Ji frowned. I don't know. It depends on the decision of the emperor of the central dynasty. You don't have to worry about this. Continue to put on a show for the sea race and the beast race. Do your best to capture Qin Feiyang. Also, speed up the soul line and crystal veins I told you to collect. The divine king smiled. Okay. Heavenly Lord Ji nodded and asked, What about the elixirs? When are you going to give them out? After we get rid of the spies. A cold light flashed in the divine king's eyes. Every time he thought of the 2 spies of the purple gold divine dragons, he felt extremely uncomfortable. One was his nephew, and the other was the person he respected and trusted the most, but they betrayed him. This was unforgivable. Chapter 40-187 Sea God's Island. In a majestic hall, Yu Lao sat at the top, while Neptune and the dragon god sat on the left. The 3 of them were silent, and the atmosphere was particularly depressing. About half an hour passed. The king, the divine king, and the sovereign of humanity had just arrived. What is the meaning of this? I told you to come here immediately, but you waited for so long. It seems that you really don't put Yulao in your eyes. The dragon god suddenly stood up and glared at the three of them. Are you a dog? Bite whoever you see. Such a big thing has happened, and everyone is in a panic. Shouldn't we calm everyone down first? The divine king stared at the dragon god. The dragon god, really didn't like anyone right now. In short, he just wanted to find a punching bag to vent his anger. But obviously, he found the wrong target, the king and the other two in the divine kingdom, which one of them had a lower status than the dragon god. Was it possible to use them as punching bags? Enough! Yu Lao's face darkened. He glared at the dragon god, looked at the king and the other two, and waved his hand weakly. Sit down! The three of them sat on the seats on the right. Yu Lao asked, What's the situation outside now? It's very chaotic. Living beings from all over the place are discussing this matter, afraid that they will be implicated. I'm afraid it won't be possible to completely calm them down in a short time, the king sighed. It's all within my expectations. This old man also didn't expect this Long Chin to have such a terrifying secret technique. This can't go on. Otherwise, our divine kingdom will be destroyed by them sooner or later. Yu Lao said in a deep voice. Yes, the king nodded, looked at the silent Neptune sitting opposite him, and asked, How is the situation of the sea gods now? Neptune clenched his fists and said with a gloomy look in his eyes, They are all disheartened. I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to walk out of this shadow for the rest of their lives. Now that things have come to this, don't be too sad. After all, the Oceanids still have to rely on you. If you fall, everyone will completely lose their backbone. The king consoled. Yes. Neptune nodded and took a deep breath. He looked up at Yu Lao and said, These people must be killed in the cradle. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. That's right. If what Tian Peng and the various sea gods said is true, then Qin Feiyang and his group must have obtained at least several tens of thousands of ultimate ultimacies of ultimate laws. These ultimate profundities are enough to create a large number of will of the heavens experts in a very short period of time. The dragon god nodded in agreement. Just thinking about this number sent chills down his spine. What about you guys? Yu Lao looked at the monarch and the other two. We have the same intentions as Neptune and the dragon god. However, there is a problem in front of us now. Qin Feiyang has already risen. The Eye of Heaven, 3,000 incarnations, the law of life and death, and 2 wills of the heavens. These are not things that we can contend against. The monarch sighed. There is also Long Qin and the golden-winged Wolf King. They have also grasped the will of the heavens. Putting Long Qin aside, the golden-winged Wolf King's battle soul is, in a sense, no less terrifying than Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations. As for Long Chen, Mu Qing, the demon ancestor, Mu Tianyang and Dong Jingyang, although they have not grasped the will of the heavens, their battle souls are also heaven-defying. For example, Long Chen's battle soul's God's domain can even restrain the 3,000 incarnations of the purple-gold divine dragon clan. To be honest, it is really beyond our ability to deal with this group of people. The human race's sovereign sighed deeply, his face full of helplessness. From what you said, are you going to watch them continue to be so arrogant? The dragon god said angrily. Is there something wrong with your head? Isn't this a discussion? If you have the ability, go and find him directly. What are you still sitting here for? Even though the human race's sovereign had a good temper, he could not help but be angry at this moment. I was thinking of going to find him, but unfortunately he didn't dare to appear. The dragon god sneered. What are you being so arrogant for? Your greatest reliance is nothing more than the origin energy that the Lord Ruler gave you. But now, Neptune's origin energy has fallen into his hands. Your so-called advantage is gone. The divine king's face was full of ridicule. Hearing this, the dragon god suddenly stood up and suddenly became angry out of humiliation. "Sit down," Yu Lao snorted coldly. The dragon god said in a deep voice, "Yu Lao, they are obviously boosting the morale of others and destroying our own prestige. What they said makes sense. Don't think that Qin Feiyang and the others have fewer people. If they join forces, they can be compared to our thousands of troops." Yu Lao sighed. The several strongest war spirits were a very difficult problem to deal with. Yu Lao is still the sensible one, unlike some people who only know how to be unreasonable. The divine king glanced at the dragon god and smiled coldly. "Enough, enough! Shut up, all of you. Actually, it's not that we don't have a chance to deal with Qin Feiyang. The brothers Lu Yunfeng and Lu Yuntian, they were specially brought by me to deal with Qin Feiyang. But this Qin Feiyang has never confronted us head-on." Yu Lao rubbed his forehead, his face full of irritation. "Are the brothers Lu Yunfeng and Lu Yuntian that strong?" The divine king and the others looked at each other. Yu Lao said, "Haven't you experienced Lu Yuntian's strength?" "Yes, I have." "His demon king true body is indeed very powerful, but Qin Feiyang also has 3,000 incarnations. In addition, he also has the law of life and death, the eye of heaven, and 2 wills of heaven. In that case, Lu Yuntian shouldn't be Qin Feiyang's opponent, right?" The king frowned. "Do you think Lu Yuntian's strength is only this much? Let me tell you, if he goes all out, none of you rulers of the divine kingdom can last more than 5 rounds in his hands. There's also Lu Yunfeng. Although he hasn't made a move, his strength is enough to easily defeat you." Yu Lao smiled faintly. The hearts of the 5 leaders trembled. So strong? Lu Yunfeng, Lu Yuntian, and the origin force in the dragon god's hands. If Qin Feiyang dares to face them head-on, even if he has obtained the origin force in Neptune's hands, he will still die without a doubt. But the problem now is, how can we make him fight us head-on? At this point, Yu Lao frowned. He had been pondering this problem, but he couldn't think of a good plan. A head-on battle, the king pondered for a while and shook his head. This group of people is not only terrifying, but they are also very rational. For example, if it were someone else who obtained the origin force in Neptune's hands, they would definitely stir up trouble everywhere. However, this Qin Feiyang hasn't made a move until now. So, to make them fight us head-on is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Doesn't he have any friends or relatives? Yu Lao frowned. "Your question," the king smiled bitterly. Yu Lao was stunned for a moment before he reacted with an awkward expression. He asked a very stupid question. How could a group of foreign invaders have friends and family in the divine kingdom? Yes. The dragon god suddenly spoke. Huh. Everyone looked at the dragon god. The dragon god stared at the king and said word by word, "Qin Feiyang's family is your purple, gold, divine dragon clan." "What do you mean?" The king frowned. "He is the descendant of your daughter, which means he is also the descendant of your purple, gold, divine dragon clan. Blood is thicker than water. This is something that can't be severed. So I have a plan." The dragon god's eyes flickered. When the king heard this, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that the dragon god had seen through the alliance between the purple gold divine dragon clan and Qin Feiyang. "What plan?" Yu Lao asked. "Let the king show weakness and look for Qin Feiyang. I believe that as a descendant of the purple gold divine dragon clan, Qin Feiyang will more or less have some thoughts about the purple gold divine dragon clan. Not to mention letting the king gain Qin Feiyang's trust. As long as the king can invite him out, we can launch an encirclement and annihilate them." The dragon god smiled coldly. "Makes sense." Yu Lao nodded and turned to look at the king. The king frowned. "What are you hesitating for?" Don't tell me you also have some thoughts about Qin Feiyang. The dragon god's eyes narrowed slightly. When the king heard this, he raised his eyebrows and was furious on the spot. Seeing this, Yu Lao hurriedly shouted, "Dragon god, watch your words!" The dragon god pursed his lips and fell silent. Yu Lao looked at the king and smiled apologetically. Because of Tian Peng, the dragon god is now angry, so his mood is a little irritable. Don't bother with him. Tell me your concerns. The king nodded, pondered for a while, and sighed. Although he has the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon, I don't think he has any thoughts about the purple gold divine dragon clan. How'd he know if you don't try? The dragon god said, "There's no need to try this kind of thing at all, because my purple gold divine dragon clan participated in the 2 invasions of the Sky Cloud realm. Let's talk about the first time. Ji Yunhai brought people to the Nether King's Hell, causing the entire Nether King's Hell to be plunged into misery and suffering, and the Blood Demon clan was almost wiped out. And I heard that Qin Feiyang and the Blood Demon clan have a very good relationship. The second time, Qin Feiyang comprehended the law of life and death to pass the tribulation. The heavenly monarch, the divine king, and I personally came to the Sky Cloud realm to kill him. Think about it. If it were you, would you still have thoughts about the purple gold divine dragon clan? If he really had thoughts about the purple gold divine dragon clan, he wouldn't have hidden my daughter and not even let me see her." The king let out a deep sigh. This sigh was actually because he felt sorry for the divine kingdom's princess encounter in the Sky Cloud realm. She had sacrificed so much for the Sky Cloud realm, but in the end, she was sealed in the land of buried gods. As the instigators, the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Lord, even if he peeled off their skin, it would still be difficult to relieve the anger in his heart. That makes sense. Yu Lao nodded, thought for a while, and looked at the king with a smile. But we can still give it a try, just in case, right? All right. Since Yu Lao insists, then I'll do my best. The king nodded and immediately took out the divine voice stone. Buzz. Soon, Heavenly Lord Ji's figure appeared. Father. Heavenly Lord Ji bowed. The king ordered, "Immediately spread the news that I'm inviting Qin Feiyang to the purple gold divine dragon clan as a guest." What does that mean? Heavenly Lord Ji was stunned. Just do as I say. In short, do everything you can to make Qin Feiyang agree to meet me. The king waved his hand. Okay. Heavenly Lord Ji nodded, and the shadow quickly dissipated. The king put away the divine voice stone and looked at Yu Lao, saying, "I've already arranged it. Whether it works or not, it depends on luck. Then let's wait here for the news now." Yu Lao smiled slightly. Hearing this, the divine king and the human race's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Wait here for the news? Then how would they inform Qin Feiyang that this was a trap? Chapter 4188. Is there a problem? Noticing the abnormality of the divine king and the human race supreme, Yu Lao asked suspiciously, "Could it be that he's guilty?" The dragon god looked at the two of them playfully. "I'm flattering you by saying that you're brainless." The divine king raised his eyebrows and looked at the dragon god mockingly. "What did you say?" "Personal attacks at every turn. Let me tell you, don't go too far." The dragon god stomped his feet in anger. "Why don't you think about it? Qin Feiyang is such a cautious person. If he knew that the king wanted to see him, wouldn't he let Mu Qing check the king's whereabouts? When he knows that the king is on the sea god's island and is with you, wouldn't he know that this might be a trap? And you're saying that we're feeling guilty. Next time when you say something like this, you'd better think it through first. Don't make a fool of yourself." The divine king smiled coldly. The dragon god's face burned when he heard this. He actually didn't think of such a simple logic. Ahem. Yu Lao coughed dryly and said with a smile, "The The Divine King's concerns aren't unreasonable. King, you should return to your tribe first. If there's any news, inform us immediately. Okay. The king nodded, got up, opened a space-time passage, and walked in quickly. Let's retreat first. Otherwise, being with a certain someone for too long will lower our IQ. The Divine King snorted coldly. The human race, supreme, shook his head and laughed. The dragon god pointed at their backs and said angrily, You Lao, look, what kind of attitude is that? Ahem. Yu Lao coughed and said with a smile, Dragon God, if you have nothing to do in the future, don't talk so much, lest we embarrass ourselves with you. You, the Dragon God's body stiffened. Neptune's blow is no less than yours, but look at Neptune, and then look at yourself. Yu Lao shook his head, got up, and left quickly. To put it bluntly, the Dragon God was now like a mad dog, biting whoever he saw. Black Tortoise World. Currently, no one was walking outside the Devil's Land, because they were all in seclusion. The ultimate profundity of the 6 strongest laws, the will of the heavenly Tao. Such a fortuitous encounter could only be encountered by chance. Therefore, no matter who it was, they all cherished this opportunity. As for Qin Feiyang, after obtaining the origin energy, he went into seclusion to comprehend the law of nothingness. Although he had already grasped quite a number of ultimate meanings, he was still a long way from grasping all of them. But suddenly, the sound of the divine sound transmission stone roused him from his seclusion. He took it out and saw that it was the monarch, sending him a voice transmission at this time. Could it be that he was here to ask him for the ultimate profound? He pondered for a moment. He activated the divine sound transmission stone. The monarch's shadow appeared, looking at Qin Feiyang, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, and said in surprise, I thought that after obtaining the origin energy, you would immediately make a move on the Dragon God, but I didn't expect that you were still hiding in the Black Tortoise World. To deal with the Dragon God, you can't rush. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. If he wanted to deal with the Dragon God, he must find a suitable opportunity. It seems that you are not arrogant yet. The monarch smiled. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at the monarch in confusion. I just returned from the Sea God Island and learned from you, Lao, that the strength of Lu Yunfeng and Lu Yuntian seems to be even more terrifying than what we have seen. The monarch said in a deep voice, Lu Yunfeng? Lu Yuntian? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Who were these 2 people? He had no impression of them at all. It's the 2 human prodigies from the Central Dynasty. The monarch sighed. So it's them. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. There was no doubt that he was talking about the inner demons and Lu Jijin. If old Yu isn't exaggerating, then these 2 people might become a formidable opponent for you. The monarch was worried. Formidable opponents? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled disapprovingly. Let me tell you, you can't be careless. These 2 are really simple. He is not the prodigies you have met before. The monarch was afraid that Qin Feiyang would be too arrogant and underestimate these 2 people, which would cause him to suffer a great loss in the future. I know. Don't worry, no matter who it is, I will do my best. Qin Feiyang smiled. It was not easy to say the identity of the inner demons and Lu Jijin. Moreover, he did not know what the inner demons and Lu Jijin were planning now. Therefore, the fewer people who knew about their identity, the better. The monarch said, In addition, I have now released the news to invite you to the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan as a guest. Invite me to be a guest? Qin Feiyang was stunned. What was going on this time? Think about it carefully. Why would I do this? The monarch looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Are you giving me a test? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes, just take it as a test of your brain. The monarch nodded. I'm not that bored. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips, then rolled his eyes and grinned, unless there is a reward. The monarch's face darkened. You want a reward for this? You are a miser. Besides, Now that you have tens of thousands of ultimate profound meanings of the strongest law, what else can catch your eye? But suddenly, a sly look flashed in his eyes as he stared at Qin Feiyang like an old fox. He nodded and said, "Okay, there will be a reward if the answer is right, but there will also be a punishment if the answer is wrong. At that time, you will give me 5,000 ultimate profound meanings of the strongest law." Ah. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was really here for his ultimate profound meaning, and he asked for 5,000 at once. Do you think that these ultimate profound meanings of the strongest law are radishes and cabbages that can be found everywhere on the street? Do you dare to bet? The monarch's eyes were full of provocation. Then what is your reward? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. I won't reveal it for the time being, but I guarantee that it will surprise you. The monarch smiled mysteriously. Qin Feiyang was in a dilemma. 5,000 ultimate profound meanings of the strongest law was not a small number. Although there was still a lot left, wouldn't it be better for him to keep it in his hands? But the monarch's reward would definitely not be ordinary. You don't dare? Just say it. The monarch laughed. Don't provoke me. I won't fall for it. However, I can still give it a try. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered. The monarch invited him to the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan as a guest, and he even announced it to the public so blatantly. Obviously, it didn't make sense. What kind of trick was hidden in this? Wait a minute. Suddenly, he realized an important point. The monarch seemed to have mentioned that he had just returned from the Sea God Island and discussed the strength of the inner demons and Lu Jiajin with Yu Lao. Gradually, a trace of a smile crept onto his face. Seeing this, the monarch's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Could it be that he had really guessed it? A moment passed. Qin Feiyang finally looked up at the monarch and said with a smile, "If I'm not wrong, your invitation should be a trap." The monarch's mouth twitched. This kid really saw through it. It seems that my judgment is correct. Although I now have Neptune's origin force with the origin force in the hands of the dragon god, plus Brother Lu Yunfeng and the 5 major clans, it's still possible to kill me. However, if I don't confront you directly, no matter how strong you are, you won't have a chance to kill me. So Yu Lao and the others thought of letting you get close to me and lure me out. As long as I show up, they can encircle and annihilate me. Qin Feiyang laughed. The monarch was stunned when he heard that. He actually guessed it correctly. What kind of brain does this kid have? It was as if he saw it with his own eyes. How about it? If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Qin Feiyang smiled proudly. Who said you guessed it right? The monarch came back to his senses and snorted coldly. Isn't that the case? Qin Feiyang looked at the monarch mockingly and said with a smirk, "But your reaction is enough to explain everything. Don't try to act shamelessly." The monarch's mouth twitched, and he coughed dryly. Do you want to find a chance to get rid of Lu Yunfeng and Lu Yunfeng? You're changing the topic, Qin Feiyang said with a dark face. No, this is serious business. The monarch shook his head. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and shook his head. I can't kill these 2. I haven't made a move on the dragon god because I don't want to fight with them. Why? The monarch was puzzled. This, Qin Feiyang hesitated for a moment and shook his head. I have my concerns. I hope you can understand. Concerns? The monarch was puzzled. Since they were enemies, he had to find a way to get rid of them. What concerns could he have? You will know in the future. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. You kid, you're always so mysterious. Fine, I won't ask about this. The reward I promised you, I will personally deliver it to you in a while. The monarch smiled faintly. There's really a reward? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He thought it was just a joke. Who am I? I am the monarch of the divine kingdom. Of course, I mean what I say. The monarch smiled proudly and then turned off the voice transmission stone. Qin Feiyong was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he couldn't help but look forward to it. In the blink of an eye, outside, half a year had passed. In this half a year, everyone's attention was focused on the purple-gold divine dragon clan, but Qin Feiyong didn't appear. Will he come? The monarch's invitation is a great honor. Honor? That's only for us. For Qin Feiyong, the monarch's invitation is probably worthless. Although the purple-gold dragon blood flows in his body, he is not a purple-gold divine dragon after all. Moreover, our divine kingdom invaded the sky cloud realm twice, and all of this was the monarch's order. So for the purple-gold divine dragon clan, Qin Feiyong probably only has hatred in his heart. That's not necessarily true. No matter who it is, they definitely want to acknowledge their ancestors. Maybe this Qin Feiyong still has a trace of affection for the purple-gold divine dragon clan. Regarding the grudge between Qin Feiyong and the purple-gold divine dragon clan, the various continents had differing opinions. But Neptune, the dragon god, and Yu Lao were all upset. Half a year had passed, and there was still no news. Did he really not have any thoughts about the purple-gold divine dragon clan? Besides, this was the monarch's invitation. Even if he didn't have any thoughts about the purple-gold divine dragon clan, out of respect for his elders, shouldn't he at least reply? Chapter 40, 189. But in the Black Tortoise realm there was a piece of great news. In the sky, golden auspicious clouds covered the entire sky of the Devil's Land as if they were plated with a layer of gold leaf. Waves of heavens might spread in all directions. Frenzy stood above the ancient castle, looking up at the sky. His face was full of excitement. That's right. After such a long time of bitter cultivation, he finally welcomed the arrival of the will of heaven. Voila! The will of heaven poured down like a waterfall, quickly drowning Frenzy. At this moment, Frenzy felt as if he was lying in his mother's embrace. His body and mind were incomparably comfortable. Li Feng, Mu Qing, and the others who were in seclusion couldn't help but feel envious when they sensed the aura of the will of heaven. However, no one came out to watch the show. They all wanted to fuse with the ultimate profound and grasp the will of heaven as soon as possible. A moment later, the clouds in the sky finally dispersed. Haha, Frenzy laughed happily. I say, you just grasped a will of heaven. Is there a need to be so cocky? The white-eyed wolf's voice sounded. Not convinced. Let's have a fight. Frenzy bared his teeth. Who has time to care about you? The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly, but there was no trace of him. Boring. Frenzy pouted. All of them were in seclusion. Even if he wanted to be cocky, he couldn't find anyone. Clang! The next moment, a loud explosion resounded, shocking everyone in all directions. Frenzy was startled and quickly looked at the castle. What's going on? Qin Feiyong and Dan Wangkai, who were in seclusion in the castle, also hurriedly ran out, their faces full of surprise. It's not you guys who caused the commotion? Frenzy asked. No. Qin Feiyong and Dan Wangkai shook their heads. Then what's going on? Frenzy sized up the castle. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, he said in surprise, Could it be boom? But before he could say anything, the aura of the castle erupted, and it soared like a rocket. The three of them looked at each other. Immediately after, ecstasy appeared on their faces. Obviously, the castle was evolving. The castle had evolved into an intermediate-level Dominator divine weapon. This moment had finally arrived. Boom! A short while later, the ancient castle's aura had indeed risen to the level of a mid-level sovereign divine weapon. Even though there were no changes to his body, the divine might that he emanated was completely different from before. A mid-level Dominator weapon, this was a qualitative leap. It also represented the transformation of the Black Tortoise realm. This was because the ancient castle and the black tortoise world were inseparable. When the ancient castle evolved into a mid-level sovereign divine weapon, it also meant that the black tortoise world's strength had reached the mid-level sovereign divine weapon level. In other words, now, low-grade sovereign weapons and one or two ultimate profound meanings were no longer a threat to the black tortoise world. Clang! Clang! Before he could congratulate the castle, a series of deafening explosions rang out in the sky. The three of them hurriedly raised their heads and looked at the sky. They saw tribulation clouds rolling over, and the heavenly might shrouded the entire area. What's the situation? The castle is undergoing a tribulation? Didn't you say that it doesn't need to undergo tribulation when it evolves? Madman was bewildered. Something's not right. It's not the castle's tribulation. Qin Feiyang shook his head and stared at the tribulation clouds in the sky. The lightning in the clouds were like giant pythons, densely packed. The amount of lightning had already far exceeded the heavenly tribulation of a sovereign divine weapon. In short, in such a situation, there was definitely more than one person undergoing tribulation. Swish! At this time, Little Wimp appeared. Along with him were 15 heaven-defying divine weapons. They were all familiar divine weapons. There was the Sunset Divine Bow, White Phoenix Divine Sword, Qilin Divine Sword, Demon Dragon Sword, Seven-Star Staff Axe, and so on. It can't be. Madman's eyes widened in anger. 15 heaven-defying divine weapons evolving at the same time? Because of the evolution of the ancient castle and the black tortoise world, the origin energy has increased greatly. As a result, these heaven-defying divine weapons have broken the shackles and welcomed the heavenly tribulation. Quickly bring them out to undergo tribulation, Little Wimp urged. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded his head. He didn't expect that the evolution of the ancient castle and the black tortoise world would bring about such benefits. Wait. Madman reached out and stopped Qin Feiyang. He looked at Little Wimp and said, If we bring them out to undergo tribulation now, won't it be a bit dangerous? Hearing this, Qin Feiyang also calmed down. That's right. Right now, Yu Lao, Dragon God, and Neptune were all waiting for him to appear. Then what should we do? We can't undergo tribulation in the black tortoise world, right? Little Wimp frowned. It shouldn't be a problem to undergo tribulation in the black tortoise world. After all, the black tortoise world has already reached the level of mid-level sovereign divine weapons, and these divine weapons are only the heavenly tribulation of low-level sovereign divine weapons. Madman said. This, Little Wimp hesitated for a moment and said, helplessly, Then let's try it first. If it really doesn't work, then we'll bring them out. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of Little Wimp. He looked at the group of heaven-defying divine weapons and smiled. Let me congratulate you first for finally welcoming your heavenly tribulation. These heaven-defying divine weapons in front of him, each of them had fought with him. So seeing them evolve, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. Moreover, he had promised that all the heaven-defying divine weapons that followed him would try their best to evolve into sovereign divine weapons. Although it wasn't all of them now, it was still a good start. I have to thank you for this. If it wasn't for you, how could we have the chance to evolve? The 7 Stars Rod said. His words were filled with gratitude. Once upon a time, the dragons didn't even dare to think that one day it would evolve into a sovereign divine weapon. We're all companions who have gone through life and death together. You're treating me like an outsider. Let's begin the tribulation. Qin Feiyang smiled and shouted, Blazing magic sword, come out and help. This sovereign is a mid-level sovereign divine weapon. How can I become a tool? The heavens are unfair. The blazing magic sword sighed and ran out. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and ordered, You are responsible for sealing the aura of the heavenly tribulation. You must do your best. If the devil's land, central state, and the four great regions are affected by the heavenly tribulation, I will hold you responsible. Tyrant, the blazing magic sword snorted coldly. The sovereign divine weapon rolled out and sealed off all directions. With a thought from Qin Feiyang, 3,000 incarnations appeared as well, and all the ultimate mysteries were activated. However, the aura of these ultimate mysteries were all restrained. This was to prevent the Black Tortoise realm from being hurt. After all, 3,000 life and death kingdoms and 18,000 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. If they didn't restrain their edge, the Black Tortoise realm would have been razed to the ground before the heavenly tribulation descended. Boom! Finally, the first heavenly tribulation of the 15 divine weapons descended. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and all the ultimate mysteries immediately rushed into the sky and floated below the clouds. The 15 heavenly tribulations were like a torrent, crashing onto it. Waves of terrifying energy, fluctuations immediately spread out. This void was annihilated on the spot. Clang! At this time, the ancient castle also rose into the air, and together with the blazing magic sword, sealed off the fluctuations. However, even if 2 mid-level sovereign divine weapons joined forces, it was still very difficult to face the impact of this fluctuation. After all, 15 divine weapons were undergoing tribulation at the same time. Moreover, the power of the heavenly tribulation was originally very terrifying. It seems that it won't last long. Brat frowned. If he didn't consider the devil's land, central state, and the 4 great regions, it didn't matter. But the problem now was that he couldn't hurt these places. Because now, even in the western region, there were countless living beings, and he couldn't let everyone move. Kacha! The second heavenly tribulation descended. Compared to the first heavenly tribulation, the power increased by a bit. No, you guys better hurry up and go out. Brat urged. He pondered in his heart. It seemed that in the future he had to make a special place for the living beings of the Black Tortoise realm to undergo tribulation. But it was only limited to ordinary heavenly tribulations. For example, the heavenly tribulation of a sovereign divine weapon. It was best not to be in the Black Tortoise realm, unless the Black Tortoise realm grew to the same size as the Sky Cloud realm. Go out and undergo tribulation, Qin Feiyang murmured. Where would he go to undergo tribulation that wouldn't be discovered by Yu Lao, Neptune, and the Dragon God? Why don't we use the origin power? Madman looked at Brat and laughed. Get lost. The origin power has to be saved for the critical moment. Moreover, there are so many heaven-defying divine weapons evolving now. Once they succeed, we will need more origin power in the future. Brat's face darkened as he said angrily, Then where can we go to undergo tribulation? Once they went out, it would definitely alarm everyone. At that time, they would definitely fall into a situation of being surrounded. I thought of a place. Suddenly, Dan Wonkai said, Where? Qin Feiyang and Madman immediately looked at Dan Wonkai. The forbidden area where the gate of the divine kingdom was. Dan Wonkai said, That's right. Qin Feiyang and Madman slapped their heads. This forbidden area was behind the west continent, and the east continent was opposite the west continent. Yu Lao, the dragon god, and Neptune, who were in the east continent, definitely couldn't sense the aura of the heavenly tribulation. After all, the heavenly tribulation of the sovereign divine weapon was much weaker than Qin Feiyang's second will of the heavenly Tao. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the third heavenly tribulation fell. Destructive fluctuations crazily attacked the barrier set up by the castle and the flame magic sword. The barrier kept twisting. Indeed, it couldn't hold on for long. Very decisive, Qin Feiyang immediately waved his hand, swept up the 15 heaven-defying divine weapons, and left the Black Tortoise realm, descending above a mountain. This was somewhere in the south continent. Heavenly tribulation? Why would a heavenly tribulation suddenly appear? There were many fierce beasts in the mountains. Seeing the sudden arrival of the heavenly tribulation, they were all shocked and then quickly looked up at the sky. "Isn't that Qin Feiyang? He has been hiding here all this time." The ferocious beasts below widened their eyes and immediately fled in panic. Even Neptune, the dragon god, the monarch, the divine king, and Jizun dared to provoke him. Who wouldn't be afraid of him? But Qin Feiyang ignored them and opened another space-time tunnel, directly descending to the center of the forbidden area, where the gate of the divine kingdom was originally located. The tribulation continued. However, the news of Qin Feiyang's appearance in the South Continent immediately spread like a storm. Why is he undergoing the tribulation again? After receiving the news, the divine king immediately went to the mountain to check. After asking the fierce beasts in the mountain, it turned out that the divine weapons were undergoing the tribulation. This was not a big deal, because compared to Qin Feiyang's heavenly tribulation, the tribulation of the divine weapons was not worth mentioning. However, when a group of fierce beasts said that they seemed to have seen 15 divine weapons undergoing the tribulation at the same time, the divine king was immediately stunned. 15 divine weapons undergoing the tribulation at the same time? Are you kidding me? This meant that 15 heaven-defying divine weapons had evolved into sovereign divine weapons at the same time. Such a ridiculous thing was unheard of. Chapter 4190. Is there any news about Qin Feiyang? Sea God Island. In front of a courtyard, Yu Lao walked out of the room and looked at Neptune, who was standing outside. At this time, Neptune was no longer as decadent as before. His entire body was exuding a shocking sharpness. Yes, just now, someone in the southern continent sent news that Qin Feiyang appeared in the southern continent and seemed to be helping 15 divine artifacts to pass the tribulation. Neptune nodded. Yu Lao was shocked and looked at a courtyard not far away, shouting, "Lu Yunfeng, Lu Yuntian, come and gather immediately!" However, the inner demons and Lu Jijin did not appear. What's going on? Yu Lao raised his eyebrows, and his divine sense rolled out and shrouded the courtyard. No one. When did they slip away? Yu Lao looked at Neptune in shock. How would I know? Neptune was dumbfounded. Aren't they with you? If you don't know, how would I, a person who lives thousands of miles away, know? Bastard, you're really worrisome. Yu Lao cursed and looked at Neptune, saying, "Go find the dragon god and go to the southern continent first. I'll send them a message, and when they come back, we'll rush over immediately." Okay. Neptune nodded, opened a time passage, and turned to leave. Yu Lao also immediately took out the divine sound transmission stone. However, there was no response to the two of them. What the hell are they doing? Yu Lao was furious to the extreme. He had clearly told them not to run around during this period and to be ready to attack at any time. But now, they couldn't even find a shadow. They didn't even respond to the message. Where is Qin Feiyang? Above the mountains, the dragon god and Neptune descended and looked at the beasts below. I don't know. A group of beasts shook their heads. You don't know. The two of them were full of hostility. I really don't know. As soon as he came out, he opened a space-time tunnel and left with those 15 divine artifacts. The group of ferocious beasts was terrified. That damned little bastard. He must have gone to find a place to undergo his tribulation. Neptune's face sank. He took out the divine sound transmission stone and sent a message to the divine king. The divine king had long since left. For her, what she was most worried about now was Qin Feiyang's safety. A moment passed. The figure of the divine king appeared. Beside him were the monarch and the supreme being of the human race. Divine king, where is he? The dragon god roared. If you ask me, who should I ask? The divine king raised his eyebrows. The dragon god roared. Isn't he in your south continent? now that he's gone missing. Who else should I look for if not you?" The divine king was so angry that he laughed and shouted, "Are you going to look for me if your father is missing?" The dragon god was furious. It wasn't easy to wait for this little bastard to appear. How could he let him slip away just like that? "Dragon god, don't worry. We've already sent people out to search. 15 divine artifacts undergoing tribulation isn't a small matter. No matter where he's hiding, he'll definitely be seen." The monarch comforted. "Yeah, it's useless for you to be anxious about this." The supreme being of the human race nodded, then turned to look at the divine king and comforted. "Don't be angry. The dragon god is also anxious. You know how to be a good person." The divine king glared at him in annoyance. The supreme being of the human race smiled awkwardly. However, this dragon god was really tortured to the point of madness by Qin Feiyang. How could the dragon god be so unreasonable in the past? At this time, Yu Lao finally arrived with the inner demons and Lu Jiejin. Both of them were sleepy and yawning. "What's going on?" Neptune was suspicious. They ran to a nearby island to sleep. Yu Lao was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. When Neptune heard this, he had a helpless look on his face. The dragon god raised his eyebrows and said, "Can you guys be a little responsible?" The inner demons was slightly stunned, glanced at the dragon god, raised his eyebrows and said, "Are you teaching us how to do things?" Those blood-red eyes made the dragon god's heart tremble. "Enough. No matter what, the dragon god is also a senior. Show some respect." Yu Lao berated, "You're also teaching me how to do things?" The inner demons looked at Yu Lao. Yu Lao's face was dark and his veins were bulging. They were really lawless, weren't they? Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Neptune quickly comforted, "Brother Lu, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Everyone is too anxious, so their tempers are a little fiery. Who's your brother? Are you worthy of being my brother?" The inner demons sneered, showing no mercy. Neptune's expression suddenly froze, and a trace of anger couldn't help but rise in his eyes. The divine king and the other two watched this scene through the voice transmission godstone, and their hearts were also in disbelief. This Lu Yuntian was truly out of his mind. He dared to provoke anyone. In fact, the inner demons did this on purpose. It was to buy some time for Qin Feiyang, because transcending the tribulation also required some time, as long as the tribulation was over. Even if they found Qin Feiyang, Neptune and the others wouldn't be able to stop him. "Any news?" "No, we'll go back first." Lu Jiejin asked. "The 3 major races have already sent people to look for him." Neptune took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said, "So you haven't found him yet? Then why did you bring us here? Isn't this a waste of our time?" The inner demons snorted through his nose. "Don't you know how to help?" The dragon god couldn't help but roar. "If you want us to look for him, what do you need to do?" "You can't even catch a mere Qin Feiyang. I really don't know what you, the dragon god, are doing." The inner demons looked at the dragon god with a look of disdain. "You, say it again if you have the guts." The dragon god pointed at the inner demons angrily, gritting his teeth. "Yo!" The inner demons laughed strangely, stepped in front of the dragon god and laughed. "So unconvinced? Let me tell you, if you don't do it today, you're my grandson." "Preposterous!" the dragon god roared, and his aura rolled out. The ultimate meaning of all the strongest laws instantly appeared in the sky. Courting death. The inner demons' eyes flashed with killing intent. Behind him, the 5 demon kings appeared. Swish! The battle was about to break out, but at this moment a figure stood between the two, and it was Yu Lao. Yu Lao didn't say anything and just looked at the two of them with a gloomy face. The dragon god looked at the inner demons, then at Yu Lao, and finally loosened his fist. The ultimate meaning in the sky also dissipated. I thought you'd be awesome. Turns out you're just a coward. The inner demons waved his hand, and the 5 demon kings disappeared. Then he walked to Lu Jejin's side without looking back, looking at the dragon god with eyes full of disdain. Can you stop talking? Take it as this old man begging you. Yu Lao roared. He was full of helplessness. If it weren't for the fact that these 2 brothers had heaven-defying means, he wouldn't have been able to count on them to deal with Qin Feiyang. Back then, when the emperor of the Central Dynasty asked him to bring along the inner demons and Lu Jejin, he was a little unwilling because he knew in his heart that he couldn't control these 2. But if he didn't bring them along, the other 8 geniuses wouldn't be a match for Qin Feiyang and the others at all. For a moment, everyone was silent. The atmosphere on the side of the king and the other 2 was fine. Anyway, no matter what the inner demons did, it had nothing to do with them, and they couldn't be hurt through the divine voice stone. But the atmosphere here was particularly oppressive. The dragon god's gaze would occasionally glance at the inner demons and Lu Jejin with a trace of murderous intent. Time passed quietly. About half an hour passed. Buzz. Suddenly, a buzzing sound was heard. The human race supreme being was stunned and took out the divine voice stone. At that moment, everyone looked at the human race supreme being. The human race supreme being glanced at Yu Lao and the others, and then activated the divine voice stone. A shadow appeared. It was the great venerable. What's wrong? The human race supreme being asked. Sir, someone reported that there was the aura of the heavenly tribulation in the void. The great venerable said, the aura of the heavenly tribulation. The gaze of Neptune and the others couldn't help but tremble. Since it was the aura of the heavenly tribulation, it was possible that the 15 divine artifacts were going through the tribulation. Got it. We'll be there right away. Don't come, just guard Mount Supreme. The human race supreme being ordered. Yes, the great venerable responded respectfully, and the shadow quickly dissipated. Neptune also immediately turned off the divine voice stone, opened a space-time tunnel, and rushed in like lightning. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the dragon god, and he followed closely behind. Hurry up and follow. Yu Lao looked at the inner demons and said, and immediately entered the tunnel. The inner demons and Lu Jejin looked at each other, frowned slightly, and then followed. On the other side, why is this great venerable of your Mount Supreme so insensible? Can't he wait a little longer and send us a message? The divine king was speechless. He also doesn't know that we've already formed an alliance with Qin Feiyang. The human race supreme being smiled bitterly. Then what do we do now? Qin Feiyang might be in danger. The divine king asked worriedly. What else can we do? We can only go and take a look. If it really comes to that, then we'll have a showdown. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the king, and he also opened a space-time tunnel and walked in with the divine king. The void was the name of the forbidden area. At this moment, terrifying auras rolled out from the depths of the void. In the mountain range far away, many beasts were watching this scene in shock. Although there was a heavenly tribulation here, and it had been there for a long time, they didn't know that it was Qin Feiyang's 15 divine artifacts that were going through the tribulation. There were also beasts that entered the void, wanting to get closer to take a look. However, the aura of the heavenly tribulation was too terrifying, and the nearby beasts weren't very strong compared to Qin Feiyang and the others, so they couldn't get close at all. 5 more heavenly tribulations, and you can become a real, sovereign divine weapon. In the central area, Qin Feiyang looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky and smiled at the 15 divine artifacts. Thank you. The group of divine artifacts was also very relaxed. Because they didn't need to do anything at all, Qin Feiyang helped them block all the heavenly tribulations. They never thought that the tribulation could be so easy. What are you thanking me for? We'll fight side by side in the future. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled. But as soon as his voice fell, he suddenly turned around and looked at the void behind him. Two sharp lights burst out of his eyes, and he muttered, "They still found us." In the void, not far away, 5 figures appeared. Who else could it be but Yu Lao's group of 5? Who is it? The 15 sovereign divine weapons couldn't help but be shocked. They had always been in the land of origin, so they weren't familiar with Neptune and the others. However, the 5 of them could enter the void and even get close to the central area, so their strength was definitely not simple. Chapter 40, 191. You really know how to hide. Neptune and the dragon god laughed sinisterly. You flatter me. Qin Feiyong responded indifferently. He couldn't panic. There might still be a chance to turn things around. Once he showed any signs of panic, the other party would definitely suppress him with all their strength. Now, there were only 5 heavenly tribulations left for the 15 divine artifacts. As long as he succeeded, everything would be fine. Swish! At this time, the king and the other 2 also arrived behind Yu Lao and the others. Looking at the situation in front of them, the 3 of them glanced at each other. A bright light flashed through their eyes as they walked to old Yu's side and stared at Qin Feiyong. Their eyes also flickered with a cold light. Monarch, God King, Paragon, Dragon God, and Sea Deity have all arrived. There's also old Yu from the Central Dynasty, Lu Yunfeng and Lu Yuntian. You guys really think highly of me. Qin Feiyong laughed. Isn't your name Qin Feiyong also well known in the Divine Kingdom? Besides, to be able to make the Divine Kingdom send so many overlords to deal with you, it shows that you are indeed a big shot. Yu Lao sneered, but in his heart he was in disbelief. Not only did they know his existence, but they also knew the names of Lu Yunfeng and Lu Yuntian. It felt as if they knew everything. I'm just a pawn in the sky cloud realm. What kind of big shot can I be? You, on the other hand, are all famous and influential figures. Now you have come to deal with a small pawn like me. Isn't that beneath your status? Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. You're quite sharp-tongued. Yu Lao's eyes flashed with killing intent. You flatter me. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and said with a smile, Senior, can you wait for their heavenly tribulations to end before you make a move? Beautiful weather? The group of people was stunned and looked up at the sky. What kind of beautiful weather was this? Who didn't know that the void land rarely saw the sun all year round? Without a doubt, he was stalling for time. Crack! Accompanied by the sound of thunder, the 95th heavenly tribulation descended. The terrifying divine might made Yu Lao and the others feel a sense of dread. They had seen a sovereign weapon undergo tribulation before. However, this was the first time he had seen 15 sovereign divine weapons undergoing their tribulations at the same time. There was only one word to describe it. Terrifying. Don't waste your time with him. He wants to buy time for those divine artifacts to transcend their tribulations. Neptune said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the dragon god waved his hand, and a stream of origin energy appeared, turning into a 3-foot-long sword that shot towards Qin Feiyong. Why are you guys taking advantage of someone's perilous state? Isn't that a little despicable behavior? The inner demons muttered. The actions of a villain. When the dragon god heard this, he could not help but roll his eyes. Do I still need to be a gentleman with this little bastard? The sword formed by the origin energy slashed towards Qin Feiyong crazily. The void collapsed and the earth cracked. In the blink of an eye, tens of millions of miles were razed to the ground. You want to kill me so badly? Qin Feiyong raised his brows and sneered. I'm afraid you don't have the ability. Inside his body, a stream of origin energy swept out like a startled swan. Looking at this stream of origin energy, Neptune suddenly clenched his fists, his eyes filled with hatred. This was his origin energy. If the various sea gods and hundreds of thousands of corps members returned unscathed, it would be worth it. However, everyone's ultimate meaning had been snatched away. To put it bluntly, this stream of origin energy was exchanged for a bunch of trash. In the face of such a situation, who wouldn't be angry? Who wouldn't hate it? Therefore, he even had the heart to pull out Qin Feiyong's tendons and bones. Boom! Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and the origin energy turned into a long spear, shattering heaven and earth as it furiously charged forward. Clang! The two artifacts formed by the origin energy collided with a deafening metallic sound, and the destructive aura turned into waves of anger, sweeping in all directions. Because these two origin energy were about the same size, their strength was also comparable. What are the two of you still thinking about? Hurry up and do it! Yu Lao glanced at the inner demons and Lu Jiejin. Taking advantage of others' difficulties is not what a gentleman does. Lu Jiejin shook his head. Yu Lao's anger suddenly rose, and he said patiently, "This old man knows that you have principles, but is this the time to talk about principles?" Lu Jiejin was unmoved. Yu Lao sighed helplessly and turned to look at the inner demons. "Don't look at me. His principles are my principles." The inner demons smiled proudly. Yu Lao was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He said angrily, "Why didn't I see you being so principled in the past?" "In the past?" Lu Jiejin was stunned and said indifferently, "Then you have to carefully recall whether we have looted a burning house or taken advantage of others' difficulties in the past." Yu Lao frowned. After thinking about it carefully, it seemed that they really hadn't. Even the inner demons, who were arrogant and ferocious by nature, had never taken advantage of others' difficulties. The Divine King's eyes flashed, and he looked at the two and said, "I say, the two of you, it's good to be principled. But now is obviously not the time to be." "That's right. To deal with such people, we should be unscrupulous. If you are to be principled with them, the ones who will suffer in the end will definitely be us." The Divine King and the Supreme Being of the human race nodded. With them saying so, Yu Lao, the dragon god, and Neptune would be even less suspicious of them. And when the Divine King and the other two spoke, Neptune also kept persuading them. However, from beginning to end, the inner demons and Lu Jiejin didn't move much, which made Yu Lao and the other two extremely angry. Why did they bring two disobedient people here? Yu Lao stared at Qin Feiyong, his eyes flickering, and shouted, "My lord, the Divine King, the Supreme Being, the Dragon God, Neptune, follow the elders and attack together!" Boom! Yu Lao was the first to activate the ultimate mysteries. There were a total of 9 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. Space-time law, time law, destruction law, devour law, nothingness law, cause and effect law, death law, life law, and light and darkness law. This strength was indeed not simple. One must know that the group of elders in the village only grasped the ultimate mysteries of the 8 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. And Yu Lao, except for the life and death law, had already comprehended all 9 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. Can't we discuss this further? Qin Feiyong frowned. Get lost. Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to discuss with us? The dragon god roared. The long sword formed by the power of origin once again attacked Qin Feiyong. Moreover, the ultimate mysteries were activated. Neptune also attacked at the same time. Both of them had grasped 8 ultimate mysteries. This scene made the Dragon King and the other two couldn't help but frown. 8 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. This was a level stronger than them because they had only grasped 7 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that they were very clear about the talents of Neptune and the dragon god. It was impossible to surpass them. It must be the inheritance bestowed by the sovereign. This made them feel very unbalanced in their hearts. Although the sovereign had also bestowed them with inheritances, the inheritances given were the ultimate mysteries that they had already comprehended. Since they had already comprehended the ultimate mysteries, they naturally couldn't fuse them anymore and could only give them to others. In the past, they didn't think much about it and thought that the sovereign didn't do it on purpose. But now that they looked back, the sovereign must have done it on purpose to suppress them. The more they thought about it, the angrier they felt. The hostility between their brows also became more and more intense. Yu Lao and the other two also noticed the hostility of the three, but they didn't connect it to themselves. They thought that the hostility of the three was directed at Qin Feiyang. But Qin Feiyang felt the hostility of the three and was well aware of it. He immediately transmitted his voice to the three. The three of you, don't be rash. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't expose our relationship. Don't worry. Such a small matter can't make us lose our minds. But now, how are you going to solve the problem at hand? The king secretly said, Don't worry about me, just attack. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Okay, the three of them agreed in secret. They also activated their ultimate meaning and charged towards Qin Feiyang. Must you force me to make a move? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. Boom! The ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death. The ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death. And the 6 ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death instantly appeared. A terrifying will of the heavens erupted. As he waved his hand, the long saber formed by the origin energy attacked the dragon god's origin energy. The ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death and the 6 ultimate mysteries attacked the ultimate mysteries of Yu Lao and the other 4. Accompanied by a loud bang, the 2 ultimate mysteries collided with the 2 ultimate mysteries, erupting with a terrifying aura of destruction. The 2 ultimate mysteries were still evenly matched, but the ultimate mysteries, Qin Feiyang obtained a crushing victory. Because the 6 ultimate mysteries could each fight 1 against 6, the ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death were more powerful than the 6 ultimate mysteries. With the same level of heavenly will, the ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death could compete with the 12 ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death. The king, the divine king, Jizun, Yu Lao, Neptune, and the dragon god, the 5 of them added together only had 39 ultimate mysteries. So, they couldn't stop the current Qin Feiyang at all. Of course, the king and the other 2 did not show their true strength. The god race imprint, the 3,000 incarnations, the sort of faith, if they took out all these means, Qin Feiyang could only be beaten up. After all, his 3,000 incarnations still had to help him pass the tribulation. But even so, Elder Yu was still dumbstruck from watching. This is the will of heavenly will of this boy. He had long heard that Qin Feiyang had integrated 2 will of heavenly will and had the strength to crush Neptune and the others. At first, he didn't think much of it, but now that he saw it, it was indeed worthy of the reputation. If it was a one-on-one fight among the 6 of them, none would be a match for this boy. Divine King, Jizun, stop hiding your trump cards. A trace of blood dripped from the corner of Neptune's mouth as he looked at the king and the other 2 and roared. The 3 of them looked at each other. Bang! 3,000 incarnations appeared. The god race imprint was activated. Accompanied by a loud bang, the sword of faith also appeared out of thin air. When these 3 major means appeared, Qin Feiyang's eyes also showed a trace of seriousness. He was also extremely helpless in his heart. Why would there be such a big commotion and storm every time he passed the tribulation? Couldn't they let him relax a little? That you're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.